Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Timeless Gamer Show, where our games and bodies may grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain timeless. The podcast now is streaming live in Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And for all of our archive videos of our previous episodes, you can still check them out by going to the YouTube channel of the Timeless Gamer Show. And you can also listen to us in all of our in all of the major streaming platforms by searching Timeless Gamers Show. And previously on the Timeless Gamers Show, we had fun talking with the wonderful people, the very talented people from Just Dance Philippines, how they form the group and how they function and how they just have fun just dancing. No pun intended. So if you are very much curious about that particular episode that we did with the people from Just Dance Philippines, go check that out by going to our YouTube page, Facebook page, and of course, and other major streaming platforms out there. For this evening, we will be tackling down the PAL and the Japanese exclusive video games that we happen to enjoy despite them not being localized to the West. And there are quite a lot of them. Okay, and being the show as it is, we can only narrow it down to a few games, notably. But that's fine. I mean, we got the right people here to talk about those particular games. So let's get into it. We got Sir Joel Backleat, now back there on New Jersey. Manila
Yeah.
native, Sir Joel.
Yes. Hello. Welcome. 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 Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I am back here in New Jersey, still trying to get over my jet lag and making sure that everything that all the information that needs to be transmitted to our audience is at least ready to be transmitted from my brain. So thanks very much, everybody here in the chats and in the audience and in the recorded sessions. You guys can download it from our usual, from the usual suspect websites. Well, maybe not suspect websites, but yeah, from the usual podcast websites. Thank you very much for downloading our podcast. Welcome, 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 and let's get this show on the road.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Joel. And of course, from Cebu City, we got Sir JDM. 1, 2, 3, go retro.
Hello, everyone. Is it on?
Oh, yeah, you're good, JDM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to
Yes,
Timeless
1, 2, 3, go
Gamers.
retro.
And tonight we'll be talking about the exclusive PAL and Japanese games that we didn't get. Actually, we got them, but not in the US. So
True.
stick around and don't forget to drop your comments on the chat so we can read your favorite Japanese and PAL exclusive games on the show.
hmm Oh, Joe, your mic is off again. Something might have gone off. Something went wrong there. But yeah, as JDM said, we in the East here, particularly in India, in the Philippines, we did get our share of PAL and Japanese games because of the fact that we're close to Japan. It was really easy
Mhm.
to send the stuff over there, and we were able to experience it. But the United States didn't. So, for those of you who are in the Western Hemisphere right now, listening to the podcast, this is an excellent way for you to find out about all these great games that you guys didn't get to play. Back to you, Joe.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Joel. And speaking of people who are back to the show, the prodigal son has returned.
Mhm.
We missed this guy
Well,
for quite some
I,
time.
I was
The
away for.
Viraj Katwadia of the Sega Mega Masters.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I was away for a bit, but I'm back now. That's the short of it. And this looks like to be a very interesting show. We're talking about software releases at least when they came out, the Americans never got. And
Mm.
here's me in Europe complaining, oh, the Americans get everything, but we got some exclusives that they didn't get, and Japan as well. But again, we'll explore that as we go through this episode, and I think it'd be very interesting. It's definitely an informative one for sure. And I think as you listening, will be interested to see our little choices, because the way we're doing it is we just talk about a particular platform and a game or games, shall we say? I don't know what is the score is with you guys, but I'll be mentioning about a specific game for each platform that I'll be talking about that was exclusive, that was not in the America region, that will either have been in the PAL territories or Japan. But it'll be interesting to see, what the reason for it was as well. What was the score back then? So yeah, look forward to continuing this conversation as this episode goes on. And by all means, as Sir JDM says, leave your comments in the sections. It'd be interesting to see if there's any suggestions you might have, or mentions that you might have of certain games in specific regions, any quality ones as well. But yeah,
All
back to
right.
you, Sir
Thank you
Joe.
for that, Sir Viraj. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here, guys. Now, us three, Sir Joel, and Sir JDM, we grew up in the Philippines, okay? Not in the US. So during the late 80s and the early 90s, all of our video games most likely were coming from Japan. So we so we will be so mostly the ones that we'll be covering will be the Japanese games, exclusive games, mind you. While Sir Viraj will be taking us all the way to to the Western Europe to talk about the PAL games exclusive ones. So it's a very nice balance here.
I'm
Oh,
really actually.
who do we got down there in the chat?
I'm really actually looking forward to Viraj's report because of the fact that
Oh,
it's kind of uh it would be a little it's like for us here in the Philippines, it's some of the stuff that Viraj is going to be telling us about. We kind of have no idea actually was there. We were more familiar with the Japanese and the US games, and Viraj's presentation is going to be very interesting for me. I want to find out what he's going to be surprising us with. Back to you, JDM. JDM, who are the people in our chats right now?
All right.
Mm.
All right. So we have a couple here.
Mhm.
I can see Danda is 1222 here
Hey,
on Twitch.
Dad.
He said, "Yo, timeless gamers, yo." Danda is
Yes.
1222. And we also have Sir Frederick Pfeiffer.
Okay,
And
Frederick
he said,
Piper.
Sir Fred says hello, hello.
Nice, very
hi,
good,
Sir
very
Fred.
good.
Oh, speaking of the Sega Mega Masters,
Hi.
Sir Frederick Piper as well. Sir Fred is also one of the hosts of the Sega Mega Masters. Is
Yeah.
also one of the podcasts that talks about the Sega Mega Sega
Yeah.
Mega Drive and the Master System. So check that out, guys. They're a little bit on a hiatus right now due to scheduling issues, but their program's top notch. So don't
Thank
take
you.
my word for it. Go watch for yourself. So, gentlemen, let's now begin talking about the games that we have in question. We'll go with Sir Joel first. For Joel, what do you have in store for us?
All right. So, again, in the Philippines, we tended to get a lot of Japanese games because we were basically next door to Japan. And my very first JAP exclusive game, I know it's kind of, it's weird for me to say that, JAP, because of the fact that a lot of people now consider it a
In
slur.
this context, guys,
Yes.
when we say Jap games, it's
Mhm.
Japanese games. Okay, we're not
Japanese.
trying
Yeah,
to
I
be
know.
racist. It
I mean,
is what it is.
I can say it. I'm old because of
Don't
the
say
fact that that was,
JP.
yeah, because that's how we used to say it back in the day. So if you get offended, well, tough cookies. But that's how I say it. Okay. So Japanese games that are exclusive to the Eastern Hemisphere, stuff that we used to play, stuff that never came over to the United States shores. One of them, well, my absolute favorite, is a game called Star Luster for the Japanese Famicom. If Joe can show the video of it, that would be most appreciated. But I'll just read the description off of Wikipedia because it's the most accurate, it's the most succinct description that I can give for Star Luster. Star Luster involves moving through open space via a first-person cockpit view and engaging enemy ships. The player ship has limited fuel and can be refueled at bases. A map and radar show locations of enemies and bases. The player can choose a location on the map and warp to it, with the current date changing based on the warp distance. The game uses a regenerating shield and may be the first game with such a mechanic. It's an amazing game that involves, well, for those of you who like me who grew up watching Star Wars, the original trilogy, I kind of accept the prequel trilogy, none of that sequel trilogy crap. But yeah, the original trilogy, when you used to imagine being in the cockpit of an X-wing fighter, this game emulated that feeling perfectly. It's a first person shooter game where you're inside the cockpit of a spaceship and you're shooting down enemies coming at you from all different directions. And there's some enemies that are tougher to destroy than others. The blue enemies are easy to destroy. One hit, they get destroyed. Purple enemies get harder and harder, and eventually you come to this kind of circular Death Star looking ship that shoots at you incessantly, and your shields take hits. You will slowly but surely have your shields depleted. Your shields will deplete. Your what you call this your shields will deplete. Your gasoline, for lack of a better word, your your gasoline will deplete as well. And it's 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 not just a shooter game. You're also managing your what you call this you're also managing your uh what do you call this? You're also managing your resources as you play through the game. Now, it's not just the gasoline that you're managing. It's not just the gasoline. It's not just the shields. You're also managing the fact that if you get hit, there's parts of your ship that will get damaged, like your radar. Which, if it gets damaged, then the ship's in the center. If you guys are watching the video portion of our podcast, you can see how the game looks like here on the screen. You will shoot at enemies, and if those shots get at you, the radar gets damaged. You'll find it you'll find it harder to find the enemies. If your computer gets damaged, it'll be harder to control the ship. Your engine, if it gets damaged, then you'll travel slower. And every time that you travel from sector to sector of the game, then it consumes time, and the enemies don't just stand still. They will travel to your bases, as you can see here in the letter B. These bases are important to you because you can travel to those bases and refuel your ship and repair your ship as it takes damage or loses energy as you travel through the sector. Now, it's not just a simple thing of destroying enemies and managing your resources. It's also making sure that the enemy doesn't eliminate the star systems that you'll be gathering keys from. And when you gather all the keys, then you will be able to unlock a secret stages to the game. It's not it's it's very it's very deceptive in its simplicity. You think it's just a simple game. You think it's just one of those things where you pop in, you shoot enemies, and then you're done. It's the kind of game that as you play, more and more things get revealed to you, and you start to realize that this game is much deeper than you first thought it was. There's lots of factors in play. And for a game that came out in the early part of the Famicom, the Japanese Famicom life cycle, and because it never came into the US, it is fascinating in that there's so many things that you realize is happening all at the same time. And when you do, it gets overwhelming at times, especially when you're going through what you call the command experience, because you're already rushing to all the different sectors. That's one. If you guys are looking at the screen right now, there's that little Death Star thing that you have to pop or destroy at the end of every single invasion stage. And you once that's done, then you get to warp out to the next invasion portion. So it's it's simple. It's simple in its initial presentation, but as you get through it, it gets deeper and deeper. There's more and more that you realize is happening all at the same time, and it's good enough that it was able to produce a sequel on the PlayStation, which again never came to U.S. shores. It was a sequel called Star Ixium, and it incorporated a little bit more of a story. And it's fascinating the fact that this is not just a standalone game. It belongs to the Bosconian universe. If you guys are arcade players, if you guys are familiar with a game called Bosconian, games like Galaxian, games like Galaga, things like that, it's all part of the same universe. It's pretty mind blowing that when I first played it. And actually, well, later on, as I researched more about the game as I grew up, as when I was little, when I was young, I played the game incessantly over and over again, that I actually had to buy my own Famicom cartridge so that I could play it over and over. But as I researched it as I grew up, I learned so many things about it, like the fact that it belonged to a much bigger universe, and there's so many little things and secrets to it that it's one of those things that you think about as when you grow up, that wow, I was sitting on a pretty much a gold mine as when I was little, and I didn't realize it. So that's my first pick for game that never came to US shores. If you guys want a really good first person shooter game in a cockpit of a spaceship that you manage resources, and edge of your seat action, much like if you're sitting inside of the cockpit of an X-wing fighter or the Millennium Falcon, Star Luster is the game to look for, is the
Starlux.
game to play. Yes, Star Luster. And if you want a little bit more of a story, check out the sequel on the PlayStation. It's called Star Ixiom. So back to you, Joe. If you guys have any questions,
Uh,
lay it on me.
in
Mhm.
in terms of so Starlux, this is a oh, I'm sorry, this is a JP game, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay. Yes,
I
this
need to
is.
say JP game because you know what,
mm,
guys? So Twitch flagged us for
mm,
using JAP.
it
All right.
did.
So
Oh
I
my
had to.
goodness.
So I was a little
Mhm.
bit preoccupied earlier. I had to re-edit that into JP
Really?
exclusive games.
Oh
All
my
right.
goodness.
So
Come
Twitch,
on,
Twitch is
Twitch.
a little bit
Think
sensitive
about
with
it.
our wording. I'm sorry.
Oh man, I'm so
So
sorry for that.
so
As an
we are
oldster, I'm
saying
sorry.
JP exclusive games now. All right, Twitch. Okay.
Fine, fine, fine. I'm so sorry for that. But I'm an oldster, so that's how we used to do it back in the old days. So you
Back in
young
the old days.
whippersnappers.
Uh, so speaking of Star Luster, so
Yes.
how's the controls? Like what? So I'm guessing you
Mhm.
only got your directional, your D buttons.
Yes.
What
Mhm.
does A and B do?
A and B mean allows you to travel the ship forward. Basically, A allows you to move the ship forward. You can change the
Ah,
direction, and you can kind of fly around in space in full 3D maneuvers. And uh, B allows you to shoot. If you're in the large map section, A allows you to travel from sector to sector, and B allows you to shoot a limited number of what you call this ring missiles. I tend to call them ring missiles, so that you can destroy enemies that are getting a little too close to the bases or the stars. It's not just the base; it's also the stars that you have to defend, and it's a frantic way of trying to travel from one invasion portion to another, and you have to
hmm,
manage those circular missiles very very carefully because they're limited. I think you're only allowed 10 per run. And if you get
right.
really lucky, if you travel to a base, they might refill you. They might refill you some missiles, but it's a crapshoot. Honestly, there might come a time that you won't get anything. As in, they'll just refill your fuel. They'll just renew your energy, but that's it. It's like it's really random what you get from base to base. Every Bosconian base that you go to is different, and it'll just be a lucky thing. So it's really compact, it's really efficient in its design. It's pretty impressive the way that the programmers distilled everything into how many buttons is that? Four buttons, one, two, A, B, start and select into four buttons, and it made it such an efficient game that nothing is wasted. There's no portion of the game that is wasted. It's well thought out. It's very well implemented. As in, if you get into it and if you understand its nuances, you're not going to find a single moment's peace with it. And some
Uh,
people like it that way.
so how about the movement though? So I can
Mm,
see the crosshairs moving. So
yes.
what does the D buttons do? Like, does the D button move the crosshairs or the D buttons move the
Basically,
ship?
the D button moves the entire ship, and the crosshairs move in the direction that you're moving the ship
Mm.
to. So it can move
Ah,
a little bit to the right if you're moving the whole ship to the right. Basically, think the Last Starfighter. If you're familiar with the game, if the movie The Last Starfighter back in the 80s, it's a lot like that, where you're basically in the cockpit of the gunner of the ship, but you're controlling not just the gunner portion of the ship. You're controlling also the full ship movement. So it's a little. it's a little hard to initially think about, because normally we're used to shooters having a fixed reticle in the
Mm,
middle, where you move the entire ship, the reticle stays static. The reticle in this game moves a little bit in the direction that you're moving the ship to, so you kind of have to adjust your brain in that direction. But it also kind of factors into your movement as well. It helps a little bit because the reticle is moving a little bit forward in the direction that you're moving. It allows you to shoot a little bit faster in the direction that you're supposed to be finding your enemy at. So it I kind of I know it's not really, it's not really a universal experience, but some people, when they complain about lag or little differences in movements in games, I tend to think that's just your gamer brain being weak. You haven't really adjusted to quick enough to how a game plays.
yeah.
And some people, when they complain, they want the game to adjust to them. No, as a gamer, you adjust to the game, and that's how I know a game like this is not just thinking about the gamer experience, but it's thinking about the game itself. You have to adjust to the way that the gun, I want to say the gun star, but it's because the last Starfighter thing. But you have to adjust to the way that the ship moves for you to be able to maximize the way that your ship can destroy the enemies. So that's how it moves. You move the ship forward, the reticle moves along with the ship, and you can move the directions that your ship is moving in full. It's almost in full 3D. The only cheat that I can think of is the enemies never shoot at you from behind in
Mm,
in this game. I mean, that makes it slightly easier, but then again, it's already pretty hard the way it is. If the enemies were able to shoot at you from behind when you weren't looking, then it would be an unfair fight already. Mhm.
mm.
Right.
It,
Any other questions, gentlemen? Sir Brett.
well, I've got a statement. I mean, it reminds me of a game I played about a decade ago. So it's modern, but when compared to this standard, it's
Mhm.
called Star Fox Zero on the Wii
Star
U.
Fox Zero, yes. Hmm.
You know how we talk
Ah,
about how vertical is here.
yeah.
Obviously, so
Hmm.
you're in a cockpit. You got enemies coming towards you. Obviously, it's a much more advanced than this primitive thing. But
Hey.
let me finish. It's because of games like this, games like Star Fox Zero could happen. Okay,
Mm,
and this is actually an early concept of the fact that you got a reticle, you got your cockpit. The only difference is, and where this game could have benefited, and this is really pushing the Famicom NES hardware to its limit. You can see, as you said, they're using all the buttons. They're really pushing it. The fact that you have to move your ship and the reticle, it
mm,
is a bit of a. Obviously, that was the hardware at the time, and this was probably really advanced even then. But now and today, you can actually imagine somebody's got a C stick here, another thumbstick here, and you've got one that will control the ship and one that will control the actual shooting aspect of it. And that's exactly what you can do with Star Fox Zero. Although,
mm,
that being said, people did complain about Star Fox Zero, saying that's a bit too haphazard because you've got something playing on a screen here, you got your Wii U screen here, you got to look here and here. So sometimes these games can get really complex. So
true.
it's about finding something that's simple. So even though you have that issue with the reticle having to move with the ship and how it's not always accurate, but you can
Mm,
also imagine that in real, if you're trying to simulate real combat battle, think about it. You can't, like, while you're moving the ship and you're a pilot, you're not going to be able to have enough time to move to shoot at an enemy there. In real life, combat pilots have actually got the barrel of the gun is probably right at the front where you're controlling it. So actually, the reticle would have moved that way. So it's an interesting one, but that's to do with the game design. But I think that for 1985, when this
mm,
Namco piece of work came out, I think this is really really advanced for what it is, and it really did push it to the hardware.
mm,
Stayed in Japan is a shame because I think people in the West, the United States, would have really appreciated this, and Europe. It really does push the NES hardware to its limit. But again, sadly, it is what it is.
yeah. Although
Interesting.
it did come out in a few compilations. If I remember correctly, it came out on the Namco NAMCO
Yeah.
PlayStation 1 compilation as well. And let's see if I do recall, I think a few later compilations also. Let me see if I can remember that one. Yeah, it came out in a few compilations, and you can still play it in some other later versions as well. It's not just also on the Famicom; it also came out on the X68 68,000. I'm not quite
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
there was a port
uh,
for that. 2000 PC.
Yeah, the sharp, a sharp console. I never got to play
It's a
that one.
it's a supercomputer that they actually.
Oh.
Yeah, the Sharp 68,000 was a computer that very wealthy people could buy back then. And I mean,
Okay.
well, this thing was powerful. Actually, Capcom themselves programmed
Mm.
Street Fighter 2 on this using the CPS-1 hardware. They
Oh.
used this to actually
Okay.
make their arcade games. And there was actually an X68000 Mini which came out recently, but that wasn't. We don't have to talk about that because that's really
Mm.
didn't really work out. But that
Mm.
that that piece of hardware, the Sharp X68000 had some really good arcade ports that were even better than the arcade version of the game. But so
Mhm.
I would assume that Star Luster on the X68000 may be better than the NES version because you also have the FM synthesis sound and all these other things that they had in there. But it was, again, that was the X68000 in a nutshell. Maybe in the future we may cover that. But look, that's another story altogether. That
Mhm.
that game that you just showed is a very good example of something that was beautiful, but we never got it, sadly. But now we can play it in a whole variety of ways, and it's good that we discover these hidden trophies that Japan got and we never did. So yeah,
Mhm.
good shout, good shout.
Uh, with Sir JDM, because Sir JDM has played a few cockpit shooters back in his day. Any thoughts on this game, Sir JDM?
Yeah, it looks like Wing Commander,
Oh yeah.
um, and the ones that I've been playing in the mid 90s, Terminal Velocity, where you can you're in the cockpit, and um, I didn't even know that there's an actual game, console game. Was it? This
Mm.
is in Famicom, right? And
Yes.
that's way before Wing Commander and Terminal Velocity.
Oh yeah.
And it also reminds me of Top Gun.
A little
and
bit. Yeah, that's
and
true.
I was going to ask how does this compare to other games like Top Gun?
Mm.
I
Top Gun
mean,
is almost
NES
rail shooter.
Famicom
Yeah.
quality of
Yeah,
gameplay.
Top Gun is almost rail shooter because of the fact that your range of motion is limited. You're going forward and you can only move a little bit this way or that way. Whereas in Star Luster, you can go full 360.
Yeah, you
Like
got three.
yeah, you can go whichever direction you can go. You want to go. That's it. It's
are you
almost
required
And you
to?
don't land the plane. I mean, you
well,
don't
now you
land.
don't you don't land the plane. No. Yes, JDM,
You
you're
just
about to
go
say.
forward.
Yeah, I
That's
was
it.
about to say the same thing. Are
Mhm.
you required to land on the base like
No, you don't. You don't
safely?
land the closest thing that you can do is you can align yourself with the base. If you don't align yourself with the base, then you can't get refueled. You remember in Top Gun, you kind of fly beneath a giant plane, and you can get refueled that way. In here, you have to align yourself with the Bosconian base for you to be able to get regenerated with your shield, with you can get repairs and things like that. So
Yeah, about
that's
that.
about the
Like,
closest thing.
do you get replenished with your energy and your shield,
Mm.
afterburner or something like that?
And no afterburners, but in between invasions, in between enemy groups, clusters, you can travel very quickly. You can warp speed. Basically, it's space, and you travel from point to point in space, and you have to travel warp speed in between points. So that's about as close as turbo as it can get. Mhm,
Yo.
mhm,
All right. So that was Star Luster for the
mhm.
Famicom. What's
Yes.
the next game, Sir Joe?
All right, so the next game that I wanted to discuss is a game that I streamed long ago. JDM remembers the time that I streamed this. I'm not quite sure if you were actually there during my live JDM, but the game that I wanted to talk about was Demolition Girl for the
Yes,
PlayStation
Uh,
2. Yeah,
2021.
yes, 2021. Oh my
who,
goodness,
who wants
yeah.
who wants to share this one?
I'll do it.
Or
Fine, I'll do it. So I'll just do it. Strangely enough, I tried to do a little bit of research and didn't have a Wikipedia entry. I could be wrong on this one. My Google foo might be absolutely wrong on
For what
this.
I can tell with Demolition Girl, it's just a
Mm,
big ass, like a 40-foot girl
yes,
with a two-piece on, two-piece
yes.
bikini on,
Mm,
and she's about to go Godzilla on everyone's ass.
absolutely. That's
Okay,
For what I
about
can
as
tell. I mean,
yes.
I'm not really into the game based on the story.
Oh,
I'm focusing on something else.
Yes, this is the description that I found. Demolition Girl is the story of a bikini model who gets bitten by an alien crab, which causes her to become a giant, and you must stop her. For some odd reason, this game and many similar ones were brought to Europe by 505 Games. So it came to Europe. It was
Well,
available.
what
It was
what
available.
kind of person do you take me for? You think I'd buy this game? You think this is something I'd buy for money?
I
You
mean,
know,
I'm
I'm like,
surprised you haven't really had it in your inventory,
I'm
Viraj.
watching you play this game, thinking this is what you're doing, Grudge. Is this it?
Well, that's the thing. Let me just share the screen then.
What was the
if,
Peggy score though?
oh,
Maybe that's why.
actually, that's a good question. I don't even know what the Peggy score is. Let me see.
Wait, it's 3 plus. It's 3 plus in Peggy rating.
Three
I'm not
plus.
calling
Okay.
it out on Games Launchbox. It's 3 plus.
At
Hmm.
that.
I'm not even sure why she attacked. Is she really attacking the
No,
beach
she's
or just
frolicking.
there?
She's just enjoying herself.
Right.
It's a brain dead bikini model
Oh,
who
so you cannot really reason with her.
no, you
So
You know,
can't.
girls.
No, she thinks she's like in a setting where she's supposed to be doing a photography session in her bikini,
right.
and I guess because of the fact that she got bitten by that alien crab and she fell asleep and she woke up 40 feet tall, she imagined, oh, I'm on set already, all these little buildings and everything, I'm just going to enjoy myself, and I'm imagining somebody is taking my photograph as I do it. I'll go kick this car aside. Oh, ow, this helicopter shooting at me. It might be part of the whole set. So okay, fine, I'll go with it. I'll just run away from it like eek, or something like
Yeah.
that.
And
And
she's getting some media attention as well.
absolutely, there's that too.
She's getting some attention to me now.
I mean, what is? I mean, who's going to buy this game? What is this game for? I mean, what is the point
Heck,
of
I
shooting?
would. I
Like,
would buy it. You know that.
Ah,
I'd buy
would,
the weird games.
would.
it's not even accurate. I don't see any gore or any chunks being thrown out of it when you shoot this.
No, that's the thing. The stuff that you're shooting at her is supposed to be the experimental medicine that will allow her to grow shorter, that
So
will reduce
centralized.
her to normal size.
And they just
So,
happen to have that conveniently.
oh well, maybe they captured the alien crab and they analyzed it. Like, oh, this is
So
the
they're like,
crab that, yeah.
"Oh shoot, there's a 40-foot skimpy bikini wearing girl out there. What should we
Yes.
do, sir? Oh, we have this shrinking medicine that we're just chilling at the background. You can probably just shoot it,
I did
see what
see it say
happens."
anesthetic. It does say anesthetic when you hit her anesthetic, and this
Yes,
you're actually kind
there's in the earlier parts of the game, you're shooting anesthetic at her to try to calm her down, and I guess every time that
Anesthetic,
you were,
aka roofie.
yes, okay, fine. In a way, you're trying to do that. It's the fact that you're doing their best to try to calm her down or slow her down from her rampage, and I'm imagining that in between stages she falls asleep, and you're doing
You
your
know what?
research on trying to slow
She
her
should
and
be on
trying
the
to
club.
short
She should.
make.
She will go down at the club
I'm.
so fast. I
I
mean,
mean,
if the government anesthetic's not working, maybe somewhere at the down
what
club
I,
might be,
what
maybe
I
some
find
ether would
what
suffice.
I find fascinating is the age rating is 3 plus for this as Peggy, and
Mhm.
in Japan it's 12 on the Sero rating, the Kero rating, whatever it's called. So
Well,
I'm
it makes
wondering, is the EU version being cleaned up, and is the Japanese version a bit more dirty? That's what I'm trying to wonder. Is it a bit more?
that's a pretty good question, actually. You would wonder whether or not something like this would have stronger standards of control in the
Oh, she went
European
down.
version. Yeah,
Oh,
she went down, so I'm imagining
she
that
went
you're
down. Giggity
yeah
giggity.
yeah that you're supposed to be doing your research on
Nobody
how
move.
to reduce her
Let's confirm.
size. Mhm.
I
Let me
mean,
And it
confirm if she's really down. Let me
mhm,
confirm.
the concept is unique. I mean, I've never seen a
mhm,
game quite like this, but it
mhm.
looks like it could be an arcade game. Actually, you can see it.
Yes, it
Okay,
mhm.
it's,
it
it's
well
actually
actually if you're familiar with a game called Mr. Mosquito, it reminds me a lot of
Mhm.
that because of the fact that in Mr. Mosquito, you're a tiny little mosquito trying to find vulnerable parts of a human to suck blood from. In
mm,
this case, you're trying to calm down a gigantic woman who's gone who's gone on a rampage, and you're trying to find a way to lessen the damage that she's causing.
yeah.
And there's lots of different things that you can do in terms of trying to trying to maneuver. But the fact that you're trying to avoid damage that's being caused to the environment is that's the thing that was going to be the balancing factor of it. Wait one moment. I think I'm having a little bit of trouble with my video portion of it here. I guess my internet is not cooperating. But yeah, basically that's the gist of how things go with a game
Ah,
called Demolition Girl.
Okay.
can you shoot off her bikini though?
No, you
No,
cannot. No.
three plus. What do you think? Come on, man.
I
Maybe the
mean,
technique will be well, but
I
Oh,
love
here.
how she
maybe
moves
there'll
very
be a ROM
slowly.
hacker one day that will make a patch where you can do that. Obviously, like how they do the Street Fighter 6 patches with the special nude mods they have. Maybe they'll do that for you, just for you. But come on, man, there's better games than this if you want to play.
And it's not just the helicopter. You can also pilot
Yeah.
jet fighters to fight off alien invasions. You
so
can
so
run a
so she keeps
tank.
escaping the base. I mean, she's
Mm,
She's throwing
back
tanks.
here now. I mean, she's back outside. She just got
mm,
captured, and now she's
mm.
out again. What the hell happened?
I'm imagining she's confused and she's angry. Like what the hell is everybody doing? This hurts or something like that. And you as
Right.
a tank, you're trying to shoot the girl with a little bit more sedative. Again, you're trying to roofie her more. And the idea is that you're just doing your best to try to minimize damage. Well, think of it as you're a regular soldier on a day-to-day job in the base, and then suddenly your general tells you stop that 40-foot woman from going on a rampage, and you say what the hell? Okay, fine, I'll just do this then. And
Why?
With one hand.
oh, there you go. So I'm imagining also because of the fact of her increased size that her the toughness of her skin has multiplied immensely. So she can take bullet hits. So,
Very tough skin though.
yes.
Like
Mhm.
missiles, howitzers, nothing.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
still very pristine. Or, I mean, it's not even dirty or bloody. No.
I mean, here and to Viraj's point, it's weird, it's strange, it's not really the kind of game that you seriously think about playing. But for people like me, who's into the weird, the strange, the unknown, the obscure, it's
Right.
a nice little distraction from all the serious stuff like The
It's a
Witcher,
distraction, all right.
or like if you're playing The Witcher or
I wouldn't
Kingdom
say it's
Kingdom Come
distracting.
Deliverance or something. Sorry,
It's
sorry, what was that, Viraj?
I wouldn't say it's that distracting. I mean, come on, it's
Mm.
PS2 graphics, man. I mean, if it's more like,
Mm, yeah,
but I mean, you're saying it's I suppose it's unique, but it's not a game that I'd buy because it's just too basic and boring. To be honest,
yes, it's
I'd
it's
rather,
extremely
I would
basic.
rather play. I would rather play Rampage on the Master System because it's a similar sort of
Mm.
concept, isn't it?
Yeah, when you
But
stop and think about it, yeah,
Yeah,
Rampage.
yeah. Don't believe what Sir Viraj is telling you guys.
uh,
So
like
yes,
this game would have probably sold more if it was actually a Rampage in 3D because
that's
there'd
true.
be so many more elements to it. And
Well,
people
you know what's
Rampage.
better than a 140-foot girl?
Mm, two.
Another 40-foot girl?
Uh,
Yeah,
Well,
when they
really.
can battle each other out.
then
Yes.
Uh,
then it would remind me of a game called Robot Alchemic Drive. If you're familiar with a game called Robot Alchemic Drive, that would be the concept that you would have what's that mecha versus kaiju, something like that. You'd control
Yeah,
the yeah.
let her battle the crab
Okay, well,
yeah.
so
and give
there.
her crab. I don't know.
All right, so that is my game number two. Demolition Girl for the PS2. It's one of those. The PS2 had a library of small, weird, strange, and obscure games, and I absolutely love that little corner of all the platforms because of the fact that it's not just the fact that it's Japanese or PAL exclusive. It's the fact that it's weird. It's the fact that you're not as it's not as mainstream as you think the console is. The PlayStation being one of the most popular consoles of all time.
Is the most
It
popular console of all time.
sorry, what was that, Raj?
Is the most popular console of all time. The
There you
PS2.
go. It's the most popular console of all time. You, it's kind of refreshing to think, hey, it has this little corner of it too, that is not as, shall we say, pronounced as most other titles like the God of War series or something. In this case, you would say it's not just triple A titles. it has this little corner too that caters to the people who have a weird sense of humor like me. So there. So
But
that's
I
my
don't
game
know
number two.
what's so funny though. I mean, what's funny about this is this poor girl. She's got
Mhm.
voice people, and you're shooting at her, man. This is misogyny at 101, isn't it? What is
I mean, actually, no. I would argue that that is equality to its in its finest because of the
oh,
fact
go
that
on, then. What would you say? How does
you're not treating her with kid gloves. She's causing damage, so you're treating her just like any kind of other damage causing
Yes.
enemy would be, whether she's a female or a
It
male.
just so happens it's just
Yeah,
a fit girl on a bikini.
exactly. So you're giving her equality,
Of course,
right?
in the context of the game, yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you make a game like this? Let's be honest. You've
Mhm.
created this environment so you could just have an excuse to shoot at this poor little girl, man. That's what it is,
I
man.
mean, no. When you, I mean, it would it be much more? Actually, I would say that it would, in a way, that would be much more misogynistic that you don't allow for girls like this to be
Let's have a
featured
look
as
at
an enemy.
it. We got John and Ten saying, "Why
Would
would you
I
hurt her in a bikini?
would
Why
I
would you do
fight?
it? Why did you? He's
Would I
saying
try to
it
shoot
didn't
and
hurt you,
kill
man.
Godzilla,
It hurt you.
or would I try to shoot or would I try to shoot down this 40-foot girl in a bikini?
No,
Hmm.
actually, that's the thing.
Choices.
In a way, you're being nicer to this girl because in
Mm.
Godzilla, you're already shooting him with nukes,
Yeah, but
whereas
he's a
this girl, you're
fucking
shooting
monster.
her
He's
with
evil. Godzilla is
sedatives.
evil. He'll eat you. This girl's not trying to eat you. You know?
Well, there you
Yeah.
go. So again, it's not misogyny. You're being nice to this girl by
We are
shooting her with
trying to help
sedatives.
the girl.
I'm just saying it's
We
very
are
premature.
stopping the
And
girl from causing harm to others and causing harm to herself.
Yes,
We're
exactly.
heroes.
So it's not
We're just trying
misogyny.
to bring back
it's
bring
just a
her
bomb.
back to her senses.
Never,
Yes.
We're
mate.
bring
There's
her
no
back to her
reason.
senses.
Yeah, there's no purpose. There's a reason it didn't come out in America, and I can understand why. All
Yeah.
right?
Would it be any different if we just make a 40-foot dress so she's not going to be dressed up like that?
Misogyny.
Yeah.
Because you're treating her special. You're
I
treating her
know.
special.
The whole premise of this game is stupid, man. Let's be
Yes, it
honest.
is. Absolutely.
When you paid for this piece of crap when it came out, I
I
remember
would.
in the shop. I mean, I worked selling PlayStation 2 back in those days. I never even saw this game on the shelf in one of the shops, and there were like 3 of them in the mall that I was in. And I'd have remembered something stupid like this.
Mhm.
And obviously, it must have had a limited release because it was crap even for us in Europe. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's 3 plus meant that the Japanese version might have been a bit dirtier than what we probably see. That's what I think. I suspect maybe because the Japanese one was 12. It might
Mhm.
have been there. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not
Well,
sure.
this
Actually,
was
mhm.
back in the on the 2000s. This is even
Mhm.
before Me Too was a thing.
Mhm.
So that's fine. How about you, Sir JDM? Any other thoughts about?
Aside from it being like an episode of Twilight Zone, at the Twilight Zone,
Mhm.
I saw here that the model in the game, Riho Futaba, was a playable character in a game called One Champon, or uh, in Europe, it's Zombie Hunters.
Oh,
Zombie
Oden
Hunter.
Shanbara. Yeah.
I don't think I ever played that series. Actually, I've seen it, but I've never really played through it. So I'll have to get my hands on a copy sometime in the future.
Get my hands on him.
Mhm.
Well,
So
you
there.
know,
So those.
And that game was another unreleased game in the US, as I can see here.
For the
It's also
PS2
for the
version.
PS2.
Yeah, because later on, I think I do remember it being released in PS4 format. I could be wrong on that one.
Oden Shanbara Z, I think. PS4. Yes.
Yeah, there
There's a
you
game on the Wii, there's a game on the PS2 and Wii. That's the first one,
go.
and then the PS4 as a port,
There you go. So
a
those are
remaster.
my those are my two games: Star Luster for the Japanese Famicom and Demolition Girl that came out in Japan and in EU. So those are my two um
Exclusive.
PAL and Japanese exclusive games.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Joel. Very nice selections that you got there. How about Sir TDM? What you got?
Okay.
Right, for me, I got a couple of PS1 games.
Mm,
Going back to the original PS1. For my first game, it's going to be Fun Goku Ninden from ICOM in
Mm.
1996. ICOM was a subsidiary of
How do you spell
Jaleco,
that?
or ICOM,
Mhm.
AICOM. And let me just send you the title. I
Mhm.
forgot to send the title.
Oh, okay. But
The
as
game
we're
was.
mhm.
Which system?
Fun Gokunin then. So as we're doing that, as we're doing the technical aspect, I'd like to say hi to the people in the chats first.
Hmm?
Romel Bencia, who just typed in exclamation point, notify Romel Bencia, and of course Orange Coffee on Twitch. Good evening, sirs. Good evening. Thank you very much for being here, Orange Coffee on Twitch. And let's see, Jomenten, as Viraj mentioned earlier, that's Jomar who says, "Why would you hurt a girl in a bikini?" Jomar, you're not hurting her. You're just trying to sedate her. You're just trying to make sure that she's,
When you said yeah, she's gonna fall on all those buildings which is filled with glass, you're gonna cut her beautiful skin, man.
well, there
Oh,
you go. See, you want to make sure that she's not hurting herself. You
it's not
send
It's
like
her
you're
to
shooting
sleep.
her while she's running around the. She's gonna hurt herself because you're shooting her.
Exactly. Yes,
Uh,
precisely. So you're being
stupid.
nice. You're being
It's a
kind.
stupid. It's a plan. It's stupid. But that's fine.
it seems
Look,
that he's much
the
more
reason is,
concerned with the girl in the bikini than
I
the.
I
mean,
mean, you wonder why these games were exclusive in the regions, and you know why that one was because it was crap. That's why. We understand, like, maybe a publisher went down in America, or this
mm,
wasn't there. That was the reason, or whatever. Or the developers didn't have money. But no, it's because this was crap and it wasn't
well,
bankable. I don't know
there's
what.
that. I mean, that's the thing about
That's the real
exclusivity.
reason.
That there's lots of reasons for a game to be exclusive. There might be because of the fact that the publishers decided this isn't going to sell in a particular region. There might be the fact that there might not have been enough marketing for it. Not enough
Mm,
budget for the marketing for it. There might have been licensing issues for certain games. Certain
Yeah.
games might not be allowed to be released. Like
Yeah.
Super
This
Robot
this
Wars can't be released in certain regions. So
life. Yeah. I
mhm,
mean,
licensing. Mhm.
but in compared to this bikini crap, yeah, the licensing. Okay, this game cost peanuts to make, and it even cost
Mhm.
to market, but they knew it was shit and it wasn't bankable. That's the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then again, I absolutely love it for that fact, for the fact that it's weird, that it's strange, that it's perverse. It's just when you stop and think about it, the mere idea that somebody was silly enough to try to make it and have it come out on the system
Yeah.
I have to give a salute to whoever had the cojones to do it. So I have to respect that.
What's this game playing here? This is your game, is it, JDM, on the PS or whatever it is?
Mm.
What's it
yes,
called?
the PS1. It's Fun Goku Ninden in Japanese, and I think it's called The Adventures of Monkey God.
Mm. Yes, you can
Yeah,
see Sun Wukong as the main character
yeah,
there, the Monkey King, the Monkey God.
right.
From
And it's not just Sun Wukong who's the protagonist here. He also have these friends. Like in the, if you're familiar with the novel Journey to the West,
Journey to
it's
the West.
Sayuki.
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
When was this game
You
Yes,
have
released?
Sayuki. Yes.
What year was
um
it released?
it was released in 1996, but I first played it around 97 when we first bought it,
Hmm.
Okay.
and it appealed to me. And because of the graphics, this is a action platformer game,
Hmm.
like Super Mario, Sonic, and those other
Mm.
platformers. And it looks like a game that you can play on a Mega Drive or
Mm.
SNES. And
Pretty
It looks
it's
like a
much.
Game Boy.
simple, but yeah,
It looks like a Game
it,
Boy Advance.
it's yeah, it's simple, but it really plays great. The graphics, the visuals looks good. The controls are not so complicated, unlike the unlike playing Symphony of the Night, that you
Hmm.
have a lot of buttons to press to do some special moves. Here you can execute a special move by just pressing the L1 or the R1 button. And there are three protagonists: San Wukong, you have Sagojo and Hakai, each with their
Gojo
special
Hakai. Yeah.
weapons. Yeah, and yeah, and it runs in 60 FPS. It looks good. It looks great, especially if you're playing on a old CRT TV. And it looks childish, but it's very challenging. Um,
Okay.
Here, and you have a different variety of enemies, and you have the enemies. It varies. It Here in the first few levels, you can see a frog, even a panda, who's one of the final boss is the stage boss is a panda. As you saw earlier, it's there was a like a honeybee. It's the first boss in the game, and then as you progress, you find like robots, barbarians, even a vampire, and then you go to the last stage and you see this. I forgot the name of the final boss, but he looks like a wizard. And yeah, and this game, it appealed to me as a kid back in 1997 because when I back then I didn't have the SNES or the Mega Drive. I was only familiar with arcade games and the Famicom, and I got introduced to Super Mario and then some other games, and this appealed to me because it I was brought back to my childhood because I didn't even know that there's also platformers for the PS1. Then I discovered shortly after I discovered Tomba
Mm.
and those other
Also, you got
what is
Rayman.
2 point, yeah, 2.5D
Funniest
games.
thing, they even have mahjong tiles falling from the ceiling.
Yeah, it's really when I first saw that,
Film
I was
game.
really, hey, that's a mahjong tile there, and
Yeah.
then you can see the this panda throw like a walk or something that you
Mm.
can actually throw back at him, so you
Oh
can
my
hit him back.
gosh, racism. Okay, fine. No, I'm not gonna.
But it's true.
Mm. No, for those of you who are not in the know, the Journey to the West books were part of the classic Chinese series, along with the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the Outlaws of the Marsh series. It's not as popular in the West, surprisingly, but then again, a lot of classical literature from the east hasn't made its way to the west just yet, but this is really popular, the Journey to the West saga, because it was also the basis for the anime, Dragon Ball Z. Hmm.
Yeah, and
Ah,
you
yeah.
can see why this was exclusive in Japan because it's designed for a Japanese audience. And
Mm.
Mm.
another thing as well, I remember reading on, and I don't know if you guys can verify this with me as well. And this is to do with
Mm.
like Sony PlayStation president. And when the PlayStation came out in '95, and this is basically his thing, which is we don't want any 2D games on our platform. We want them all to be 3D. That's why
Yes.
you have like a lot of like PAL exclusives like Mickey Mania and
Mm.
Jim. They were only in the PAL regions rather than in the American regions because they really wanted to push the 3D graphics of the system to show that we're like the 3D platform, because that's something
Mm.
that Sega Saturn weren't exactly full on board with, apart from Virtua Fighter and some other games on release. So they really want to show the 3D chops of the system. So a
Mm.
game like this, 95, 96, which is what you said when this came out. So
Mm.
first of all, to be honest, I think the real reason is it's a Japanese themed game for a Japanese audience, and that's why it never made it to the region.
Mm.
To
I would
Mm.
say the Americans got a game something similar to this. It's
Mm.
called Donkey Kong Country.
yeah,
I mean, it looks like it, plays like it.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, well, I wouldn't say it has that graphical style, but I wouldn't
Yeah,
say
Mm.
obviously Donkey Kong Country is its own thing, and even the Mega Drive had Vector Man, which had
Vector
sort of
Man, yeah. Mm.
graphics,
Vector
the
Man.
similar sort of look to it. This is obviously graphically better than both those games in terms of what
Mm.
it can do. The PlayStation can do more, and you can see the game can do a lot more. And again, it's its own game in its own respect, but I think 1996 were 2D platformers the in thing at the time. Did they really want to push
No, you're right. Viraj is correct on that one. PlayStation
it?
had an emphasis on 3D graphics and
What they wanted to
polygonal
push the
things
3D.
back
That's what
then.
they really wanted. Don't get me wrong, they had some great 2D stuff like Abe's Odyssey.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
really loved Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus. And they had some
Abe's
really good.
Odyssey, yes. Hmm.
Yeah, so those are problem-solving 2D sort of. I wouldn't say platform.
Mm.
I'd say they're more puzzle platformer style games. But you also had stuff like Rayman that came out on the PlayStation. So you did have the odd
Mm.
Goombas you mentioned doing RFD and things like that. So you did have the odd ones and some enhanced Mega Drive, Super Nintendo games that look better on the PlayStation hardware. I think Lion
Mm.
King even had a PlayStation release, although it was a Mega Drive game. So
Hmm.
they did actually make enhanced ports of those 16-bit games on the PlayStation platform. And let's
Hmm.
not forget arcade ports they managed to really do justice. But I think again,
Hey, they
releasing
have the Kintin Cloud right there. If you're
Mm.
if you're familiar with Dragon Ball Z, there's the
Yeah.
Kintin Cloud.
Indian
all these
Cloud.
Japanese references, you got all that there. I'm thinking, would it have appealed to a Western audience to buy this game?
Hmm.
But no, it's an interesting game, and I'm sure it's a very good game because I never played it, but it looks
Hmm.
very interesting. It's just
Yeah, you might want to try it
yeah,
sometime. And the only bad thing that I could think about this game is after you play it long enough, it makes you kind of dizzy because
mm,
back in 97 when I first played it, um, I finished the game, but
Hmm.
right after I felt motion sick.
Ah, I
And
see.
all
Okay.
the graphics and
it,
all what's going on. But
yeah,
that being said, a lot of PlayStation games, well, actually, a lot of games in the fifth generation era would make you feel that way because they were trying
Hmm.
all sorts of new things during there. But yeah, I'm not
Oh,
surprised.
I forgot to mention, is one of our criteria for this episode games that you can play despite not being able to read Japanese script.
Yes.
Hmm.
mm.
There you go. Hmm. There you go.
Okay.
All right, nice.
But in this game's case, there's not much dialogue. There are cutscenes, but it's like there's only two cutscenes. I mean three.
Mm.
It's just the opening movie, then some mid game cutscene, then the ending.
Mm. Okay. And you can easily figure out what they're saying during those
Yeah.
cutscenes. Hmm. Okay, there you go.
Hmm.
Nice choice. Nice choice, JDM. I certainly does look like something that I would play as a platformer, and of course, my familiarity with the Journey to the West book series and the culture is something that would lend itself to my enjoyment to the enjoyment of playing this if I were to go through this. Mhm.
Mm.
All right, there you go. So, no, I guess that's JDM's choice. First choice, Fungoku Ninden. And what is your second choice, JDM?
Yes, before we proceed with the second game, let me just read some comments here
Mm, yes.
from Marlon Hurtado Lescubides. He
Mhm.
said earlier that Parodius and Twinbee are
Mm,
exclusive Japanese shoot 'em up games. But I think they got Twinbee in a 3DS, but they released it in North
Well, they
America.
ported it
mm,
eventually on even the
Yeah.
Super Nintendo.
Port.
They
Yeah.
mm. And
eventually
he
ported
also
it on.
mentioned Bakuso Kyodai and Let's Go Eternal Wings is an exclusive Japanese racing game based on Koro Koro comics and anime series. I
Yeah.
really have to get into that. In Pinas we called it the Tamiya series, right?
Um,
The
Yes.
Tamiya race car
Let
series,
me know.
and it was huge back then. Like everybody was racing those mini RC cars. Uh, and it even got so popular. I think in the Yakuza series, they have this little pocket circuit fighter
Mm.
mini game, and I absolutely love that. I love the pocket circuit series, and it's fascinating that it can come out in Yakuza, but it doesn't have its own translation. The original PlayStation One Eternal Wings game into English. It's just too bad. All right, back to you, GDM.
All right. So thank you so much, Marlon, for your comments. And I think we also have, let's see,
Mhm.
Sir Frederick with, he mentioned earlier,
Donna.
my suggestion for Eastern Hemisphere exclusive is Dana. I'm not really
Yep.
familiar.
Donna.
Dana Breath of Light,
Oh,
yeah. It's basically a Japanese Mega Drive game, but it's
mm,
a really it's like an action platformer side scroller, and it's like
Mm.
it's a good game. It looks like it's something developed by a Wolf Team or Telnet. I don't know if it was them. It was an obscure developer that made this game, but it's a very good one actually. It's one worth checking out. I think it's got an English translation patch as well. Not that you need it, but you can play it without English translation. But you have that, and you can patch the ROM to play in English.
And we'd also like to say hi to Neil Trinidad of Neil Chills on Twitch. Hey Neil, it's
Hi.
great to see you. Thanks very much for being here. Good evening, he says, and we're very happy to have Neil Chills from Twitch here watching our show as well. All right, JDM, continue.
Okay. So let me just mention one of my honorable mentions for the
Oh yeah.
PS1
Mhm.
exclusive
Mm.
PAL. Actually, Japanese exclusive game. It's called Ganbare Goemon
Oh,
Kurunara
Ganbare.
Koi
Mm-hmm.
Aishige Ika no
Nanbari.
Kurokagen. That's a
Mm-hmm.
mouthful, and the
Yeah, it
translation
is.
is "Do your best, Goemon, if you come love the dark shadow of the Aishige family." Not
Mm-hmm.
sure
It's a
who
Konami game,
those
isn't
are.
it?
Yes, it's
Konami.
a Konami game,
Hmm.
and it was only released in Japan.
Yeah.
And unlike the one that's in Nintendo 64, Mystical Ninja,
Legend of the Mystical.
yeah,
There was actually there was a
yeah,
SNES game. There was a SNES game, and there was also a number of sequels of the Gumbara Gomen series that continued on Super
yeah,
Nintendo, but they were exclusive as well. And even on the NES, which is where this guy debuted, it was a Famicom exclusive. So Gumbara Gomen is a Konami sort of mascot, but only for Japan
mascot,
predominantly.
yeah,
I would say he's their mascot, but he's one of their main sort of crew and one of their main characters. And there's features in this game called Konami Crazy Racers on the Game Boy Advance, and that's where you sort of I knew him from. I was like, who is this guy? And I realized he was in the Legend of the Mystical Ninja, which is the Western iteration of his series. But we very rarely do we ever get that. And again, I don't think it was as successful as Konami wanted to, which is why him being a hero that he is, and his series stayed in Japan, which is a shame because they are really, really good games. They're really good games, but we never
mm,
got them. And I have played through them on Super Nintendo, and they're a lot of fun. Now, you're talking about the PlayStation version, which I'm not familiar with, so please continue.
yeah. So that's the Ganbare Goemon on the PS2, PS1 is action platformer game. This time in 3D. It plays like if you're familiar with Brave Fencer Musashi.
Oh
It
yeah.
plays like that, but um, you play as Goemon and his friends. You can choose one. There are four characters that you can play. And the funniest thing with this game is you can play. You do this.
Oh.
This roaming in the town. Then all of a sudden, you play as this gigantic robot that you fight with other robots. Although I'm not sure why suddenly it became like that because of the lack of English translation. And that's one of the memorable Japanese only games that I've played.
So what you're
This
saying, JDM, is that Naruto ain't got shit on Goemon then?
Oh,
Because Goemon has giant robots, and I don't think Naruto ever had that.
so they can summon like a giant frog, but not this gigantic robot.
Super robot, funniest
You know
thing.
what? You know what I want to see? The robot from this Gambare Goemon game and Miss Riho Potaba from Demolition Girl.
What, duke it out? Oh, she wouldn't even break a sweat. She would just destroy it. I my my
I'll
my
drink.
my money's
I'll
always
drink
on.
that sweat.
There you go. My money's
Can I
always
lick
on
that sweat?
Demolition Girl. My money
Okay,
will
so
always be on Demolition Girl. There you go. All right,
uh,
continue, JDM.
another contender for the Japanese only game, Pepsi
Hmm.
Man.
Oh, of
Pepsi Man is
course,
also
yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
which
God damn it!
I'm really not quite sure why it was only a
which
Japanese
which is
game.
so weird because the cutscenes are purely in English too.
Yeah,
It's some
and
American grabbing Pepsi off of the refrigerator and laughing it up watching TV.
well, you know,
I think yeah.
Maybe because of licensing. They don't want to pay
Yes,
for licensing. That's the reason.
Yeah.
And Pepsi
Yeah,
wanted
likely.
to
Yeah.
maybe they're just trying to promote Pepsi more in Japan
Well, there's
because they
also that.
already
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
they already have their market in the US and
mhm.
in Europe. So why
That's
not in
true. That's
Japan?
true. And of course, an honorable mention because of the fact that Neil Chills is watching right now. You guys should watch his amazing stream of Pepsi Man. To this day, it is one of the very best live
Yes.
streams I'd ever watched because of the fact that you can see the absolute frustration with every single bad thing that happens to him. So props to Neil, Trinidad of Neil Chills, and his run on Pepsi Man. You guys should check out his page. All right, back to you,
And
JDM.
and what was your saying back then? If he hadn't have like a heart condition back then, he
Yeah,
does now.
yes. There you go. Neil Chill says hellish game. Yes, very true. But it provided tons of entertainment for the audiences, Neil.
Mm.
So thank you very much for streaming this game. It was
It is fun
amazing.
for those who are watching,
Yes.
but
But not
never
for
fun
the
for those who are
player.
actually playing the game.
And by the way, the video is still up in
Oh
Facebook. If
yeah.
you can check Neil Shields, just
Yes.
look for it.
Check it out. Honestly, it's so much fun. I mean, for the audience anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to the second game that I have. I just
Mm,
recently discovered it, and it's a game called Brightest, still for the PS1 in 1991 from
mhm,
Sony Computer Entertainment
mhm,
uh, Incorporation. So Brightest is action
How do you spell
RPG
that?
game. Brightest. You spell bright then with I then an S.
mhm. Okay.
Brightest.
Right.
It's an action RPG game.
Oh,
I recently discovered it because I found some Reddit forums, and they one of the redditors they
brightest.
suggested this game, and when I played it, it looks like
I know
um
why you like this. Kind of plays like Vagrant Story.
it yeah, it looks like Vagrant Story.
Actually,
And
no. It reminds me of Fighting Force. If you're familiar with Fighting Force for the PlayStation One.
yeah, it's like that. It's but instead of a beat 'em up, they have this level up system. They
Mm-hmm.
have a magic system, so it's an action RPG.
Okay.
And what I my first impression of the game is, if you're familiar with the From Software game called Kingsfield, the one
Mm.
Kingsfield.
with the one with the one that's dungeon crawler, first person dungeon crawler.
Hmm.
It this is like this game, but this time it's third person, like Vagrant Story, or I think this is like one of the precursors of um, Dark Souls or Demon
Mm-hmm.
Souls,
Hmm.
because the monsters are they don't roam. Monsters don't roam around, but when you encounter them, you need to outmaneuver them, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to hit them specific, like strategically, so you can
Mm-hmm.
defeat them.
Okay.
It's like this game, but the only downside is, since it was only released in Japan, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't have tran- uh,
A translation. Oh.
translation. So
Hmm.
what I did when I first tried this game, I got my phone here,
Google
and every
Yeah.
Translate.
time there's a cutscene, I do the Google Lens. Then
Mm-hmm.
uh, you just
Translate.
aim it at
Yes.
the yeah it
As per
automatic.
Joe's recommendation, I've started doing that as well. It looks like it's it's doable that way. Mm-hmm.
It's doable. Very inconvenient, but hey, that's all we have so
Yeah.
far.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing is, unlike in JRPGs, you can press the button to skip. You can you can't what do you call this? You
Mm-hmm.
can display the. the text on the screen long
Mhm.
enough so you can do a translation. But in this game, it scrolls up, so
Oh,
it
okay.
doesn't stay on the screen for long. So
Mm.
you might miss some of the dialogue.
Oh,
But
that's too bad.
as long as you have the translator, then you can have the idea where to go next or what the this person is
Trying to say.
talking about, trying to
Hmm.
say. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it really appealed to me because it really looked like Vagrant Story, and
Hmm.
this came out in 1998.
Hmm.
So this is before Vagrant Story, this is pre Vagrant Story. And I think this is the time where they're just trying to figure out the analog controls, because
Right.
I you can't control the camera using the right analog stick. You just fix I mean you can control the camera only with the shoulder buttons like the L2 and
Oh,
the
so this is
R2.
pre-Dual Shock.
Mm, I think the DualShock was already out back in 1998, and
Yeah, but in terms
yeah,
of the design of this game,
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Maybe they're
probably.
just trying to figure out the analog controls
Yeah, they
and
hadn't
just
standardized the way that certain controls would have gone back then. There were weird control schemas back then. Like
yeah.
yeah, because I
there were.
remember Wild Arms, they didn't really use the dual
Mhm. Yes.
the L3R3.
Hmm.
With Wild Arms 1, you just control everything with the shoulder buttons and the D buttons. That's it.
Hmm. Hmm. True.
And
Yeah.
that came out like 97, 96, 97.
Mm.
And I really it would be really great if this has been released outside of Japan. Maybe it will make it more profitable in the US, because um, there's a lot of RPG games in the PS1. I think one of the best RPG consoles that you can play in RPGs on the PS1. It's really sad that they didn't release this outside
Yeah,
of Japan.
I have to
It
say
looks great.
The PS1 has a treasury of lot of great RPGs, action RPGs, and turn-based RPGs. For
Mm.
you to consider that there are a lot of other action RPGs and turn-based RPGs that never got ported or never got translated. It's pretty impressive. And that's one of the reasons why we're delving into the
Mm.
PAL Japan library today, because we want to find out about all these games that we never got the chance to play or even heard about.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
What game am I? What game do I remind this of? Guardian Crusade
Oh yes, there. Hmm.
is one.
Mm.
What else? The second Alundra,
Hmm.
Uh,
sure. Um, what else? What is that? Blazing Blade,
Oh
kind
yeah,
of. I mean,
kind
not as
of yes.
blocky as
Blazing Blade.
not as blocky as
Hmm.
that one, but this was 90s, the late 90s.
Hmm.
What else was there? I wanna say what's the no, no, not Beyond the Beyond, because Beyond the Beyond is a little bit 2D ish compared to this one.
Yeah, Beyond the Beyond was reminds me. Yeah, is more of the Golden Sun type of games.
No.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
So
Yep,
yeah,
that's it.
brightest. Well, I'll have to remember this one. Who knows? Maybe somebody might come out with an English patch of it sometime in the
Mm.
future. More obscure games have gotten English patches. Maybe this
Mm.
one might get it in the future too.
Maybe we should check romhacking.net and have a look.
Mm,
Might
I'll
already
give
have
that a
one.
shot. I'll give that a shot. Yeah, definitely. Hmm.
All
But in
right.
terms of loading time, Sir JDM, because I can see there's a lot of dungeon crawling in there, and kinda a little bit open world ish in terms of the dungeons. I mean,
Uh,
does the load times because PS1, of course, very notorious for their loading times. Like, uh, do the dungeons? just spontaneously show up, or are there any instances that it just goes to black just to load the next stage over?
Um, as what I could remember, there are areas that you could go to. Then there's a like a 15-30 second loading screen,
Mm.
and then, but I'm not really sure because I was playing this on my PS3,
Mm.
Right.
and it's on the hard drive, so I'm not exactly sure how it loads when you play it on an actual PS1. But for me, it's just 15 to 30 seconds. Then it loads. Then I think that's a quick one. The
Mm.
loading scene,
Yeah.
because I didn't see much of the outside. It's mostly um, when I played it, it was mostly inside the dungeon or something,
You see, this
like
is what I
end
don't get
system.
with some of the Japanese games. Like you see there, now loading. It's in Hindu Arabic. Then
Mm.
why not just make it the whole game like that? I mean,
Because that now loading is a standard English translation and everything else. And they probably couldn't afford English
oh,
translators back then.
because apparently the Japanese people can only read now loading, and then that's it.
Yes.
That's all the English that they know.
I mean, heck, there's Japanese words that you can read, like even if you don't read a lick of Japanese, like at the very end of any anime episode, like the little thing at the very end that says to be continued, right?
Continue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. Oh well.
And I think they the design, the level design, they try to minimize it. Like it it's dark,
Mhm.
so you can load the other areas
A
be,
little bit faster.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
like
that's a pretty good way of thinking about it.
what do you call this, like a setting in those games, you can make this draw distance.
Mm-hmm.
They made it nearer,
Mm-hmm.
so you can the system could load up the other um, areas of the game when you get to the much more closer.
All right. That's very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I think that's the limitation of the PS1 before.
All right.
Mm.
Thank you for that, Sir JDM.
So
So
that's
it's
it for me.
brightest.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
brightest for the PS1, and Phone Goku Ninden, or The Adventures of Monkey God in
All right.
1996.
He left a chest. That's gonna bother me. He left a chest underneath.
Probably
Yeah.
it. Just probably go and look at it with a key.
Maybe it's one of those chests that that needs a special key.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Rewrite. You were about to say.
no, no, it's all very interesting stuff. You know those games that you pushed out. I mean, there's a reason why they were locked to the Japan region, and I can sort of see it because it's the hint is in the genre of the game, action
Mm,
RPG.
that's
RPG
true.
means, let's be honest, a lot of them back in the '90s, even in PlayStation era, a lot of them stayed in Japan because that genre was actually favored for a Japanese audience. Japanese people
Mm,
love RPGs, traditional
true.
turn-based. That is their thing. It never really took off. Let's be honest here until Final Fantasy VII. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
that's the thing.
Agreed.
It was just one of those games that was marketed for the West, and people then started to get into JRPG because of Final Fantasy VII. You speak to a lot of Western gamers. Their first RPG was Final Fantasy VII because of the hype
I
around
mean,
that.
I
And
can
even in
under I can understand with the Japanese people. I mean, after post World War II, all they've been doing is just work, home, work, work and
Mm,
home, work and home, work and home. By doing role playing games, it kind of gives them a sense of like an escape to a reality, like
mm,
adventure games, the fantastical. So it
it's an
serves as
immersive
kind of serve as their
it's an
outlet. I mean, compared to the West, I mean, yeah, sure,
I mean,
the Western people are like that, but there's a lot more things going on compared to the what happened with the Japanese back then.
forget PlayStation. Look at the Sega Saturn. most of the RPG library we never even got to touch. Like there's so many games on the Saturn that's just locked to Japan, and they're RPGs. They're RPGs. Like for example, Shining Force 3 had 3 chapters, and we only got the first one in the West because of the lackluster sales of the Saturn in the West. Shining Force 3 actually had 2 extra parts that only Japan got. We never even got to touch them. This is one example of RPGs that were locked in Japan. Magic Knight Rayeth and so onwards. I could go on and on.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we could go on about talking about the Saturn itself. We could have a whole episode just on that. There's just so many games that we have to get through. But yeah, are we done with JDM? We finished with yours. So is it me now? Is it my turn to talk about?
Yeah, oh, here we go. So this is the rest of the show, guys.
You need me just like Ryan Reynolds. Well, just like Disney needs Ryan Reynolds right now. Okay?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, but before that, I'd like to say hi to Baron Naroyka Gamit Tagle on Twitch. He's asking, "You're back na agad, Tito Joel?" Yes, Gami, I'm back here in New Jersey. It's just too bad I never got the chance to see you while I was there. Who knows? Maybe in the near future, you and I will get the chance to see each other. Back to you, Viraj.
Right. So there's a number of systems and platforms I'm going to talk about. But and there's one actually that's just come up at the top of my head. I don't know if we'll have time, but we'll see. So we'll begin with the first one, and that's for the Sega Master System. Okay, we don't really talk about much about that platform on this channel, which is a travesty, and that's for obvious reasons. It wasn't popular in Japan. Definitely wasn't popular in the Philippines. It was like pretty much a dominant platform here for us in Europe and in the Brazil area. So the game that I'm going to talk about is a game called Scramble Spirits. Okay,
Scramble Spirits.
Yep. So it was originally a 1988 shoot 'em up developed by Sega. Okay, it's in house by them, and though it never sort of reached the success of shooters from Konami like Kirby 1942 or Compile the LS series, because it was released on Sega System 24 hardware. So at the time, the graphics were far more detailed than its rivals. So it's actually a very nicely polished. That high
Scramble Spirits, is it?
Scramble Spirits.
There you go. I saw it.
A system so the arcade game was actually very detailed and it looked really nice. It was a vertical shoot 'em up. Okay, and it had numerous ports. The Master System being the main one after the arcade, but it was also ported to the microcomputers, and you got the Amigas of the day, the Amstrad, CPC, the Atari ST, Commodore 64. The MSX and the ZX Spectrum, etc., etc. So there were a number of them, but it was the Master System one. Okay, there was actually it was actually planned to have an American release in December 1989, but for whatever reason, because I've tried to look up why it wasn't released in America, I can't think about it. It's probably because the Master System was just ailing in America, and they thought, no, what's the point in this particular game? So yeah, this is the arcade version of the game, and look how beautiful that looks. I mean, look, it's stunning even for today's standard. And this was what the 1980s they were coming out with this. One thing I like about Sega is they did make their games look good. Now, again, people think, well, what is this? This is just a 1942 ripoff. Let's just play 1942 instead. And
I was going to say, yeah.
But because this was actually very high tech. It was probably a lot more expensive for arcade owners to buy, and people just stuck with 1942. And what makes this game any more different? The only real difference. Between 1942 and this is, you do pilot a plane and you do fire ahead and you can launch bombs for ground, to attack ground units like Xevious, which is a Namco shooter on the NES. If you remember, you can also shoot ground units as well. You also have a little bonus stage you can land on the attack carriers. So you had these, it did have its unique selling points, but, there wasn't much different from the shooters at the time. And I think that's where it really struggled to gain traction, but it was a great game in its own right. Its main criticisms is that the projectiles being shot at you were quite small, and that was the thing. Let's see if we can get a video of the Master System version, because this is actually a very good-looking arcade port, and the one I'm talking about is the Master System port. That we had. So
most paused movie scenes. I'm sorry that I just got distracted by Joe's a little
there you go.
over there.
The Masters, there we go. Look, much more primitive. A year later, we got this thing here now. Even then, I would still say it's a good-looking shooter for the Master System. And again, lovely. It had 6 stages. It wasn't the biggest, longest game in the world, but it had a lovely, harmonious soundtrack. Obviously, we can't really hear the sound, but
No, it doesn't look so bad actually compared to the arcade version.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It was scaled back for you got System 24 to 8-bit. So scaling it back, yes, but it's there. But as you can see, the
Mm.
projectiles are small. You got these little planes that you can get to be your little sidekicks, and you can actually make them do kamikaze attacks. That's the only attack that you have. You don't have any bonus weapons or power bombs and things like that. It's just
Yeah,
Mm.
because what we got before, we got Twin B, we
yeah,
got Galaga, we got B
Gallagher's fine.
Wings.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
In
this is an
comparison to
advanced
this,
shooter, but I think you got like so many other great shooters that were even on the Master System platform as well. Like you got the Power Strike, which is a less which is basically the less series, which is what people were really into, I think, for the time. But this is this was popular in the UK to much extent, and it only ever had a power release. It wasn't even released in Japan. Strangely enough, we only ever got it in Europe, and I think that's because the Sega Mark III again wasn't very successful in Japan. The Master System's main dominant region was in Europe, so why not support the European nations? And I believe that's why we got this game, and they didn't, and even the Americans didn't. So there you go. But again, as I was mentioning, a beautiful soundtrack, which is very blissful, but also melancholic at the same time. I mean, how the composers did that, I don't know, but it is a wonderful soundtrack for this game as well. Um, but yeah, a truly wonderful game for what it was. Nothing that's revolutionary or groundbreaking, but definitely a nice showpiece for the Master System hardware in '89. It's just one of those games that the Americans never got. And to be honest, there are 158 exclusives the Americans never got on the Master System because that's the way the format is. But this was actually the reason I picked this particular game is because it came at a time where the Master System was being supported in America. After 1991, Americans dropped the Master System. The last release for the Master System in America was Sonic the Hedgehog. And the Master System had a second life in Europe when the Master System 2 was released. We had a whole range of 8-bit from 16-bit ports which were there, and it was a cheaper solution for Mega Drive, and that's why Sega. Everyone goes on about how Super Nintendo, and the Mega Drive, but Sega got their market share here in Europe because of Mega Drive and Master System, both. What are you singing?
Twin B.
Mm.
I'm making my own. I'm making my own background music.
Well, that's the thing. We're trying to avoid copyright here. So anyway, it looks it
You're listening to the music,
looks.
weren't you? Yeah, it's a lovely
Mm,
sound anyway. But yeah, it's
mm.
wonderful. But yeah, that's the game in a nutshell. 6 stages of just shooting and saving the world from aliens. Apparently, they're supposed to be aliens. That's the story. But they look
I would
very.
recommend this game to Sir Justin, though. I mean,
Mm.
he's our friend, and he likes shooters like this one.
This is a good
Agreed.
master shooter. It's not like I say, it's a middle of the run shooter. It doesn't blow up the world shooter. It's not like one of those things that's out there, but it's definitely a nice showpiece for the system. So again, one exclusive just to Europe. Japan didn't get it. America didn't get it. We got it. Another thing I want to add as well, and this is only something I noticed through emulation, is this actually supported FM sound. So remember, there was I might mention in our Master System episode we did a while back how there was an FM module you could attach to your Sega Mark III. Obviously, we never had that in Palm, but this was programmed with both the FM sound and normal programmable sound. So you actually had the little chip tune that you had, but you also had FM synthesis sound as well. So you can set it to have FM sound, so it will have enhanced sound when you play it by emulation. That's actually incredible as well. That they actually gave this FM support, even though it's for the PAL region. So just want to throw that out there as well. So that's Scramble Spirits in a nutshell. All right. Any questions, gentlemen?
Yep.
No? Shall we move on to the next game? No?
No, it's like you said, it seems like a pretty standard shoot 'em up, and I might play it for I might play it for the variety of it because of the fact that because of our most recent challenge episode of shoot 'em ups, I've started trying to
Mm.
get into it. So this one looks like it might be up my alley. It's not. It doesn't seem as bullet hellish as a lot of the other ones that we
It's bullet
tried
hellish,
before.
but don't get it twisted. It can't because the problem isn't that it's bullet hellish, is that the projectiles coming to you are quite small, so it's hard to see.
Oh, okay.
Very hard to see.
So
That's the challenge.
it's a little bit cheatish that way. Then you can kind of get cheated
It's not
from.
it was not so much that it's small C, but if you look at the background color and the bullet color, they
I
kind of
was going to ask about the background, Sir Viraj, because
Mhm.
if it's not bullish hell, if the background is like plain colors.
Mm.
However, if you're going to mix in all of those greens, all of those browns and grays, like on that particular stage that we are seeing right now,
yeah.
Mhm.
and then in combination with the blinking bullets, I mean, who knows?
Ah.
Like you might get caught sooner or later.
That's it.
Mm.
That would put the crimp in my gameplay of it
Like,
because
is that
again,
a the limitation of the color gradient of the Sega the Megas meh the Master
mm,
System or what?
Yeah, Master System. Yeah. Give it a go. Give it a go and see how you get on with it. That's all I can really say.
yeah, I'll give it a shot. It seems interesting though. Again, thanks very much to Dan and Viraj for putting out that shoot 'em up challenge episode. I've started to try to get into the genre. There you go.
Let's move on to the next game.
Mm.
This is no other question. So the next game I want to talk about is actually it's just one that I just thought of on the top of my head. So I'm just throwing it out there. This is one that I didn't even talked to you guys before we even did this. Well, let's do it because the Pepsi thing made me think. Oh, there was a Coca-Cola game that was on the Game Gear, and the game's called the game's called Coca-Cola Kid or Sasu Shunen Euden Coca-Cola Kid. But if you just type in Coca-Cola Kid Game Gear, you'll find it.
Uh, Paging Neil Trinidad, there's a new game that you want to try. Anyway,
The
continue,
Coca-Cola
Viraj.
thing?
Well, the reason I'm naming this game is because it's actually a really good Game Gear game. It's really, really good. And again, the only reason
Just a very blatant Coca-Cola ad right there.
Yeah.
we're gonna get some, but it's their game. Like they licensed it in Japan, and it's a lot of fun. Like they just watch this game, just go around just beating people up, and just going on. It's an action platform.
Oh,
game.
this is a lot more tolerable.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
tell. I can tell now.
it's so much fun. And again, it came out in '94. Okay, in Japan, and it came with a special. There was actually a Coca-Cola themed Game Gear that was red and it had Coca-Cola written on it. So
Oh, I saw that. Oh, Sir Raj. Sir Joel, when we were at Collector's Alley,
Oh yes.
I saw the red Game Gear that Chairman
Oh,
Irwin
I
had
didn't
it on
even notice
display.
it. Dang.
Because I thought it
Really?
was the Magic Knight Ray Earth variant because it's red. And then I took a
Mm.
closer look. It's the Coca-Cola
yeah,
variant.
Oh,
and
dang! I didn't
I
even
think he was
notice
only
it.
selling it for 6,000 pesos.
Ah, we should have. I should have noticed it. We should have gotten that then. Anyway, continue, Viraj.
because I think you could buy it. I don't know if the game came with it or you can buy it with it, but this is the game that came with it. Again, as you can see, this game offers so much variety in gameplay. It's not just your typical action platform. Look at the animation on this. This is an 8-bit game on the Game Gear. And it's a shame that it did stay in Japan because it would have done well here in the West. I'm guessing because of licensing and the deals that Japan had with Coca-Cola in the Japan territory only, it stayed. Obviously, Sega of
What is
America.
it about these soda companies not releasing their games to the West? I
Because
mean,
they want to make more money. Every region is a licensing opportunity, so you want to maximize your profits. So every single region, you reserve the right to say, "I don't want my game released elsewhere unless you pay for it." So
oh, so basically, because Pepsi and Coca-Cola is pretty much well known to the West already, they don't really need the extra effort.
there's also that, I guess.
So, so it was co-developed by I said, the CS5, which was their R&D development division there, and a company called Aspect, which went bankrupt in 2018. Sadly, but it was a second-party developer, Sega, at the time, and they did an amazing job with this. And the game just speaks for itself. It's just a really good action platformer, and it's just a shame we never got it in the West. It was stuck in Japan, so that's a Japan entry, and it's a stunning 8-bit game which looks and plays beautifully. I think I would say it's like near enough one of the most perfect gear games that I've seen. It's just a shame we never got it.
It's very fluid. I'll say this.
When you play it and you get past the first
What is
level,
he attacking with? A frisbee? What is that?
I feel like
Yeah,
it's
it's
frisbee. I
Yeah,
think.
it's a frisbee.
So basically, he's Captain America. Mhm.
Oh,
assaults in the air, man. I mean, what other games do have characters which somersault in the air? This is
Mhm.
amazing. So, yeah, definitely a game that I'd recommend you give a go on the Game Gear via emulation or however you want to play it. You can play it.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
recommend it.
so what's the main point of this game? Like, are you supposed to collect Coca-Cola cans or something?
No, you meant well. The main aim of the game is going through the level and getting through each stage and taking on the bad guys and whatever. It's just your typical generic action platform. I don't know the
You're
story.
fighting Joe Higashi from.
I know. I was gonna say.
Get through the stage, man. I think there's some evil guy trying to steal the Coca-Cola. I'm guessing I'm making up a story now, and you got to take him out.
Yeah.
So you're just going down level from level. So there we go. So yeah, pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's just it doesn't really have much of a plot to it. It's a platformer. I mean, come on. So just
I
play
mean,
it.
Joe
That's all
Joe
I-
Higashi's reputation just took a hit for me. That he was able to get beaten up by a kid on a skateboard, right?
Oh,
Drinking
please.
Coca Cola. Okay.
You've got these special attacks here, man. You know. But anyway, just a disclaimer here: drinking Coca-Cola will not give you the powers of the same character. Here, I just want to just put it out there. And if you want to live a healthy life, do not drink Coca-Cola. That's what I will say. Because of we know now diabetes and all the problems it can give you if you drink too much.
I was going to say
So,
all that sugar it's going somewhere.
I mean, what is the equivalent
Oh, China has.
in
Oh,
what is the equivalent in India though, Viraj? In the Philippines, it's
thumbs
pop
up.
cola.
They're thumbs up, but
Thumbs
Coca-Cola
up.
bought thumbs up in India. So
Ah.
now Coca. So what it was is an interesting story. So Pepsi was a dominant brand in India, the Coca company, and the reason they were dominant is because they put out a smear campaign against Coke, saying
Ooh.
because back then they used to recycle the bottles, and they said that Coca-Cola recycled their bottles with pesticides.
Oh.
And then people
Okay.
were like, "What?" And then people stopped buying Coke, it was an absolute lie. Yeah.
and people
Oh,
just
wait.
believe that.
There was one franchisee that was doing it, and everyone Coca-Cola got banned. So what Coca-Cola did, what they do, there was another brand, an Indian brand called Thumbs Up Cola.
Thumbs up.
And Coca-Cola just bought Thumbs Up, and then they just took over the market because that's basically what happened. And now Coca-Cola is probably 50-50 in India with Pepsi now, but I think Coca-Cola just has it because of Thumbs Up.
I mean,
So,
it's pretty smart. If your brand is damaged, buy a new brand, right?
And Coca's been doing that for years, and same with sort of Pepsi. Pepsi probably developed their brand because Coke just buy them. That's what they do. So there you go. So anyway, that's Coca-Cola Kid for you on Sega Game Gear. So should we move on to the third?
Yes.
We're going 16-bit now, 16-bit land with Sega Mega Drive, and the game I want to talk about it's a late release for the platform. Okay, it's a game that's very near and dear to my heart because I love it. Okay, even though it's the PAL version, and it did get a Japan release, it didn't have an American release. Surprisingly, when you look at this game, you're like, oh my god, man, they did us Americans dirty. That's what you're going to think when you see this game. The game in question was a game developed by Treasure called Alien Soldier. Okay, Alien Soldier. When you look at it, you think, oh my god, this looks like something that's too advanced for Mega Drive. When you look at it graphically, the animation, the color, and how it pops, you're thinking this could look like it could be on Super Nintendo. That's how it looked from the off setting, because it does look really advanced. And the fact that Sega could pull it off, or Treasure made this game to that standard, is outstanding. And here we go. We got a lovely little intro credits. The music in this game is outstanding, by the way. I love the music to this game. It uses the best of FM synthesis. Love it. Obviously, this intro is written in English. There are some weird things, localization. But yeah, basically, it's a run and gun shooter. But imagine the levels are really short and you just fight the bosses. It's basically like a boss rush game. That's basically it. So look at this. I mean, look at those explosions there. Yeah, look at him, and you play as Epsilon, whatever his name is, this bird creature thing, this mutant, and
Moves fast.
Basically,
Quite fast.
it is fast. This is it. And the developers, when they created this game, they had the slogan, which was "Visual shock, speed shock, sound shock. Now is the time to the 68,000 heart on fire." And that's actually, you see that in the title sequence on the Japanese version of the game. And the 68,000 is reference to the X68000, which is the processor in the Mega Drive by Motorola. And they were pushing the processor to its limit. And this game was designed, it says custom for Mega Drivers only. Mega Drivers, that term was used in this game back then. And it's for those people who like that hardcore shoot 'em up. They were saying this is for the elite. This is for the people who want that challenge. And you have two modes in here, super easy and super hard. And it's already set default to super hard when you buy this game. It's pushing you, and it really wants you to beat this game on hard mode. And it is a difficult game for what it is. Well, I speak to Dan, and he goes, well, once you get used to the boss battles and the patterns of the bosses, you can beat this game with ease. But there's about over 18 stages here, and it's one of those games where when you die, you start from the beginning again. You don't. There's no
I am too slow for this game. I can tell.
What do you say?
I am too slow for this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. I mean, play the PAL version because it is, it's 16% slower. If you're worried that it's going to be a bit too fast, because there is slower than the Japanese version for sure. But I love this game. It's just outstanding. Now, this game, the story of this game is crazy as well. This was, and you'll be shocked when I say this. This game, majority was developed by just one programmer. That's it. One programmer made all of this. Okay, one art designer, one music composer, and he he started making this game in 1993. Okay, at the start of it, and it got towards the end of 1994, and like, well, where's the game? The game was only half complete because of all the things he wanted to do. And then in the end, the president of Treasure said, "Okay, like I know we gave you this baby to do on your own, but we need to wrap this up now because the Mega Drive is coming to the end." Because the Saturn was coming out in '95 in Japan, right? And
Mm.
Oh.
they just wrapped it up. So actually, if you look at this game, it's only half done. You wouldn't think it, you wouldn't know it. This was meant to be twice as big, than it already was, and that was the initial concept. So eventually, they wrapped it up and they finished it in 1995, and it was released. And sadly, because of the way things were going, I mean, I'm surprised it even got a Japanese release. But the Mega Drive was going strong in '95 in the European regions, but in America, maybe that's when Super Nintendo started to get most of the market share in America with the way things were going. So, a late release for the Mega Drive as well, or Mega Drive hardware didn't come out in America, and the only way you could sort of legitimately play it recently, from my knowledge, is they released it on the Genesis Mini 2 as part of the game library that was on that mini console, and it was also released on the Asian region Mega Drive Mini, the first edition as well. So that was an official way that people could probably play it. I believe it must have had some other releases from there in terms of compilations or whatever on other platforms, but I could be very wrong. But predominantly, this is actually a PAL exclusive and a Japanese exclusive. So that is actually that's actually my top 10 games of Mega Drive that I really love. So I just love that action. I love that speed, and I think that's the main thing that separates those 16-bit gamers who like Mega Drive over Super Nintendo. They wanted that speed. They wanted those actions. They wanted the action. They wanted that high adrenaline rush when playing the game, and that's what Mega Drive was known for. That's one thing that it could differentiate itself from the slow Super Nintendo. Even though the colors, this thing had a bigger resolution, more speed. This game played to the system's strengths, and it's an amazing game. And I recommend, even though you may feel you're too slow for it, give it a go. You'll have fun, and that's what this is about: having fun.
It certainly looks impressive. I might give it a go sometime in the future. And as to your point about it being developed by a single programmer, it's amazing
Oh.
how single programmers
Yeah,
can produce amazing things. Like Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley was done by
it's their
one
vision.
single guy. Mhm.
It's their
There you go.
vision, and it's not been contaminated. So I think in the end they had like a team of 5 when they wrapped it up in the end, and they eventually
Mm.
got the game done. But I'd love them to make like an uncut edition of that developer, because he's still around, and he can still continue this. And I wish he makes an uncut, a director's cut where he finishes it, and they actually re-release it. And that's a dream of mine. Obviously, that'll probably never happen. But
You never know. I mean, in current state of technology and indie games being a thing, who knows, right?
who
He
does
might
know?
make he might make some kind of spiritual sequel. You never know.
Man, we never know.
Hmm.
All right.
I would say this game kind of reminds me of a very hyper Mega Man game.
Mm.
Kind of like Hagane for the SNES, and a little bit of Contra. Kind of.
Yeah,
Kind of, yeah.
so if you love Contra, if you love Gunstar Heroes, which is also developed by Treasure,
Mm.
and if you love
Oh, Gunstar Heroes. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's made by the same people who made Gunstar, well, same development studio that made that. So you're gonna have that sort of style, that vibe about it. But you know, it's just like outstanding. This game, all the different weapons you can choose from, all the different attack styles they can like fly through enemies and all sorts of things. It's just outstanding, and I do think that it's a game that you can really enjoy. It does take, obviously you are going to die with this game. Come on, let's not
I
make
mean,
any excuses. But
it's funny that you
can't.
mentioned that it's made by just one guy. I mean, you did mention it's rather short, and I'm like, how short
It's
is
not
short?
short.
Like,
It's only, those
his
18 stages. I mean, those
yeah,
18 stages.
because looking at the gameplay, he's fighting the bosses like quite shortly.
Yeah,
I mean,
but those.
the stages alone is not that intricate.
Yeah, yeah. So the stages may not seem that intricate, but as you get deeper and deeper into the game, the bosses become that much more and more harder. And remember, like I said, you die, you're starting from the beginning again. So you got to be a person that's happy to replay the game from the start and really push it to the limits. So I suppose those 18 stages, it can take an hour to get to the end. It can take, like, I think the playthrough, it has taken me an hour when I got there, when I played
Sorry,
it.
Viraj
Matter.
mentions push it to the limits, and the song starts playing in my head. Sorry. Anyway,
Push it to the limit. Limit.
I mean, I'm an '80s kid. What can I
Oh,
say?
I
So,
see. Yeah.
Push it
So
to the limit.
that's the third game that I'll mention. I'm not going to go through like how the game plays. You can see it for yourself in the video. You know, you should just give it a go. All right, so are we ready to move on to the fourth game that I want to talk
Yep.
about? Let's do this. So the next game I want to talk about is a Super Nintendo game. So we're moving away from Sega. We're looking at the Super Nintendo platform, and I'm saying Super Nintendo because it did come out in Europe, and this is a European um, exclusive game that we had. And it was also released in Japan, I should say. So it was a Japan European game, and it was released in 1995 or 1996 for us in the PAL territories. And it was developed by a development team a development company called Quintet, and it was published by Enix Software. Okay, and it's before the merger for Square Enix, and it's a great little action RPG that I enjoyed towards the end of the Super Nintendo's life here in Europe, and it's called Terranigma. Terranigma is the name.
of course, Terranigma.
Terranigma, and it was like sort of the third child of the unofficial Quintet trilogy. That's what I like to call it. If you're familiar with the RPG, so obviously there was Soul Blazer in '92, and you had Illusion of Gaia in '93. Or it's called Illusion of Time here in Europe anyway. But you had Terranigma, which was, as I mentioned earlier, not released in the American region. And the reason for this is because the Enix had basically shut down their American publishing branch, by that time. So they weren't publishing games in America, and that's the reason the Americans never got that particular game. So there you go. What can I say about this particular game? Um, it's been criticized for its difficulty, to be honest, but I don't know why it's been criticized for that. Retrospectively speaking, I think it's quite a fun game to play. You play as the lead character Ark, and you start off your adventure in Crystal Village as you would in like any RPG. You start off in your hometown, and it's basically a game where you sort of have to go on your little adventure to, save the world from darkness. That's fundamentally it. An action RPG game which involves exploratory elements, problem solving, and the good thing about it being an action RPG is you haven't got the turn-based aspect of it, so it offers a much more seamless gameplay element rather than going to a battle screen and strategically fighting. I think people in the West actually did welcome more that aspects of action RPG. So you have that, and there's so many exploratory elements, so many exciting aspects of the story that I could go on, but I don't want to sort of ruin the game for anyone. That's why I don't want to talk about it. A game that you should definitely play if you haven't, and it's one that I think a lot of people don't really talk about as much because it wasn't released in the American territories. People always go on about Earthbound or Chrono Trigger, being like the main sort of like games for the system. But what a lot of people don't forget is that we never really got them in Europe. That's the funny thing. So we know the Americans know how to shout about games, but I don't think we shout too much about Terranigma as much as we should, because it is actually a wonderful game. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So the reason it never got published in America is because Enix closed down their publishing division at that point. And 1996 is quite a late release for the Super Nintendo from a European standard, because we embraced 32-bit technology in '95 a lot quicker, I think, than the Americans did. PlayStation really did dominate very quickly. Even though I got my PlayStation in '97, so the Mega Drive sort of Super Nintendo era did last a bit longer. But even then, like people's interest in the 16-bit started to wane after 1995, and I don't think a lot of people, even in Europe, managed to get this particular hidden gem. I think that's what I would call it for the platform. So yeah, there you go. Your thoughts on the game, gentlemen?
If there's one thing, if there are a few things that I can add to Terranigma,
Yeah, go for it.
very story driven. Like, if you
Yeah.
are going to play Terranigma, we are so lucky that there's an actual PAL English release. Because ain't no way you're gonna be enjoying this game without reading all of that text, all uh, the narrative itself, because you're gonna be it's really hard to appreciate the game, this game, without getting into getting into the lore of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, it's an action RPG, but you really need to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Like,
yeah.
why is the lead character there in the first place?
I
because,
would make
because
a point about all RPGs, which is you need to have a good plot. I think at the point, if we're talking about the mid '90s with Chrono Trigger, you got games like Fantasy Star 4 and this thing. I think at that point, video games with 16-bit and with more memory, you have more you can do with the game. With RPGs, you want to feel emotionally invested in the story. You want to feel like you're on the character side. You want to feel immersed, and you need a good story, a good plot to be immersed. I mean, I know this is nothing to do with video games, but I think the reason the Harry Potter books are so good is because they have such a good plot to them. You know, you have to
that's
have
true.
the drive to be able to go on this adventure. Otherwise, what's the point? I believe the drive for this when I played it was, I think you got your girlfriend Ellie and you had to save her or something. And what more is a drive than there is love? It's a love story. It's very hard, you know. I think a lot of people can sort of identify with that. I mean, look, loads of people get married, fall in love, or whatever. You know, you want to save your loved one from the monsters. I mean, what more is there to what other drive can you have? And I think there's something special about that. And with other RPGs of that era too, this one just happens to be a PAL exclusive, which the Americans sadly never got, and it's of a quality, as you can see from the graphics, the design, the way it plays, very good. It's not by any means a flawless game. I mean, it has its issues. I think remember Dan talking about it, yourself saying the menu system when you toggle through getting your equipment.
Oh my god, the menu system is so bonkers. I don't even know why they did it like that.
Yeah. So that's the one
Oh,
thing
and there's
I remember you
uh,
two going on about. It's not one that comes.
and another thing. What strikes me about this game is that all of those skills, all of the move sets that you see there in the gameplay, you don't really get all of those right up front. Like, you need to earn it. Like, there are certain so some of the special moves will only be available in certain parts of the game. So if you're going to play the Japanese version of it, unless you're reading the manual, you won't even know how to do it. How You don't even know how to pull them off.
Mm,
Good
yeah,
enough.
that's very true. Very true.
It
That's
kinda
where you damn.
plays like kinda plays like The Legend of Zelda, those later game. Like, and it looks like a JRPG, but it's an action
Yeah, it's an action RPG, so
action
you level
action
up from attack.
RPG. Yeah.
Action.
So
And
I mean,
there are dialogues as well. Unlike in Legend of Zelda, there you can only hear Link like do cries and moans.
well, you
But
do get
this
dialogue
one
in
got
Zelda, not as much. You do hear him talk to
nah.
people. They are conversations, yeah, but it's not to the extent Terranigma has. And yeah, there's a lot more to sort of bounce off of with Terranigma for sure in terms of the story. But ultimately, it's a game that's sort of forgotten. It's not, from my understanding, had a re-release. I've not seen it on Switch Online on the Super Nintendo side of things. I'll never see them re-release it. Sadly, I think it was a travesty we never got it released on the SNES Mini when it came out years ago. I mean, I think that and Chrono Trigger. I mean, if they should have added another game, and they should have added Chrono Trigger, and made that exclusive for the American version, and they should have made
And
Chrono.
fuck Chrono Trigger.
Sorry, I forget Chrono Trigger. They should have put this on there then. I mean, that would have helped sell this in America because it's an exclusive they never got. I mean, but that being said, Nintendo didn't need help selling the system because it's a Super Nintendo. It sold itself. It was sold out everywhere. So they didn't really need to put all these licensed games on there. But anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. Terranigma, Super Nintendo. Any further questions? No, I thought not. Let's move on to my final title. Okay. And this is moving
Right.
away from 16-bit now, moving away from 2D games. Well, it is a 2D game. Who am I kidding? But so it's a 1998 release. Okay, and it's for one of my favorite unpopular systems for the Sega Saturn. Okay, and it was made by Konami, and it's called Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and it's the Sega Saturn version. And we're thinking, why are we talking about this game? This game gets talked about a lot, but we talk about the PlayStation version. We never talk about the Sega Saturn version. I mean, what makes it so much more different, you know? Well, to begin with, it's got the ability to play with, at the start of the game, you can play with Alucard, you can play with Richter, you have a choice of character select. So the way you got to think about this particular game is is that it's an enhanced, expanded version of the PlayStation version, and that's what the Sega Saturn port allowed. But the Sega Saturn port, even though it has all these extra features, like it's got two extra dungeons there, two extra levels in there, or zones in the castle, that the PlayStation One didn't have. So it's actually a fuller, bigger game, to be fair. And that's what I will say about that game. But again, it was only sadly we only ever got it in Japan, and the obvious reason was, well, okay, the Sega Saturn wasn't popular here in Europe or in America. Sadly, it was predominantly a winner in Japan, so of course they're going to release it in Japan, and that's really the bottom line why it was released only in that region. But you know, it was also regarded sadly as a bad port to the system, because because the PlayStation didn't have a 2D graphics mode. Instead of relying on programs to turn the 3D mode into like the 2D, they just rendered it with the textures that they had. With the Saturn, it has both a 2D and 3D graphics mode. But what happened is because of the way it could be used in conjunction with the other, the developers didn't take advantage of it. Sadly, and it basically just had a very bad port, which made it look a bit weird on the Saturn because the developers just didn't take advantage of the dedicated modes that the Saturn had, and that's basically it. Also, another thing is the Saturn version, or the Sega Saturn, had a bigger resolution than the PlayStation. So you had that, and that's why you had these big black bars on the top as well. So it distorted the picture, stretching it. Another issue the Saturn version had was longer loading times and poor transparency effects. So that's basically the issue the Saturn version faced. This could have been fixed, to be honest, and altered if they just gave it enough time to play to the Saturn strengths, but they didn't. However, the reason I mention this game is because recently, as of this year, last month, they've actually uploaded there's actually been an English translation patch, which is an advanced hack of the game that they've created, which have translated it to English, so you can actually play it in English now. They've also restored the transparency effects as well. Also, you've got access to the global map of the whole thing, so you can actually see what the castle looks like. You don't always have access to it. A lot of things have been changed. So they've also removed the black bars and all the problems that I've seen in terms of, videos and dialogues, and they've also reduced the loading time. They have support for all sorts of things and bug fixes. So they fixed all the problems pretty much of the Saturn port, and they've actually made an enhanced version of it, which is actually the definitive and best way to play an expanded version of perhaps one of the best, if not the best, Castlevania of all time. And it is actually that Saturn port. So they've actually righted a wrong by creating this new hack for this particular game. And with the English translation, you win. You win. You can play it in the West. Not to say that you could never play it without the English translation, but of course you want to follow the story. Obviously, you remember with the PlayStation version of the game, you had some very hammy voice acting. Obviously, they've fixed the dialogue to much more to translate the Japanese version, which was actually much more in-depth voice acting with better dialogue that actually made sense. So again, a much more detailed game for the Saturn version. And again, sadly, we never got to play it. And now I think for those of you who haven't played it, because of this ROM hack and you want to play this for the first time, that's the way you should play it. It's the port that's been fixed for the Sega Saturn. So yeah, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Sega Saturn. And to be honest, there's a lot I could have named. In fact, more than half the Sega Saturn library is in Japan anyway. So there's so many games I could have picked. Why did I pick this one? Because I believe it's more accessible for people and people will be interested in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But there's so many games I could have mentioned. Like I said, Magic, before we even went live, Magic Light Wraith, we never got. There were the other two chapters of the Shining Force game. So predominantly RPGs we never got. But this game, nice action, 2D side-scrolling adventure RPG. I think we can all enjoy this game. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
For those people who are writing saying, "Oh, that is not an exclusive game," for the context of the game itself, like the definitive way to play Symphony of the Night, according to Serverage anyway,
Yeah,
is by playing the Sega Saturn version. I mean,
it's
it's
not
weird.
PlayStation. Okay, the
Uh,
game is not exclusive, and the PlayStation version was the one that came out. But this is an expanded version. So this version is exclusive to the Saturn with the two extra levels. You've got two extra levels on this. You've got a
Mm.
bigger castle. You get to play as Maria
But we
Reyna.
had like what?
You can't
We
do that
had
on
the
a
PS2, we had the PS3, PS4, PS5, even the Vita, PSP. Sure, not any of those consoles did a remaster or a definitive re-release of Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
yeah, but it was built on the
Never,
PlayStation
not
version, not
to
the
my
Saturn version.
knowledge, nothing. Right? I
Mm.
mean, you would think Konami would release something like a remaster. They think that that will not sell. I mean, they've been releasing like those bundles of all of the Castlevania games, but never with Symphony of the Night.
Well, not the yeah, not the. I mean, it's not the Saturn version. I want to be very clear here. They've always made it like the PlayStation version that they
Always
made
the
with that.
PlayStation 4.
Mm.
So the Saturn version is locked to its platform, sadly, and I'm sure there's like reasons why Konami haven't, ported the Saturn version because they probably had a deal with Sega, excuse me, with Sega
Do you
saying that
think?
stuck with
Do you
our
think
platform.
Konami was? Do you think Konami jumped the gun too early in releasing Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation, not waiting for the definitive version to come out equally on both Saturn and the PlayStation, though?
No, I think what it was is I think the story is Kojo Igarashi. I think that's his name, the main man behind Castlevania Symphony of the Night. He's actually said famously in an article that his PlayStation version is his definitive version. Okay, this Saturn version was purely developed exclusively for the Saturn as like just to be able to sell it, and it was an exclusive version for the Saturn because it had they launched the same game with Saturn, but it was actually a different version, and it was different in the sense that you had some extra features the PlayStation version didn't. But even then, the developer said, "Well, the PlayStation One is the one that we intended to release." Now, for those of us that know, okay, yeah, that might be the director's vision of it, but for those who want to have a fuller Castlevania Symphony Night experience, the Saturn version has a lot more, and more is always better, right? Especially if we're talking video games. So you would think that the only problem is when the Saturn version did come out, it was buggy as hell. We had some issues with it. And not that the game was broken or anything, but it would sort of not make your gameplay experience as fun as you'd want it to be. So, you know, that Saturn version had always remained all these years on the Saturn and in the Japan region as well. And which is a shame because there were people in the West that might have wanted to play more, have more Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and all these other versions that they've released on the PSP and the other ports going forward. If it's been reported on the other PlayStation machines, they were just the versions of the PlayStation version. The game wasn't actually expanded. They just might have updated the graphics. They might have added a sound menu or something and extra features like a bestiary or whatever it was, so you can go and look at all the monsters and what they could do or whatever. But they didn't add like more of a game. The Saturn version is more of a game. So if you want more Symphony of the Night, logically it makes sense to play the Saturn version. And now that they fixed all the problems with the Saturn version with this particular hack, you can play that version. That's the best way to play it.
How about any
Okay.
thoughts, Sir JDM?
So I, for one, who haven't played, um, honestly, I missed out on this game back in the 2000s because
Well, it's
uh,
1998, 1997 when it came out originally.
97. Yeah, I I really missed out on this game, and I when my classmates told me that they have this game called Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I
Mm.
in my mind I remember those first Castlevania, those earlier Castlevania games, which I had a trauma of not finishing because it's so damn hard. Then
Mm.
yeah, and I didn't know that this game was also in 2D because back then when you say PlayStation, it's all about the 3D games. There's those RPG games and those action games. I didn't when I see on the magazine that there's a review of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, there was no um like a screenshot of the game. So I was imagining that it was a 3D game like in the Nintendo 64 games. I didn't really know that it was this 2D game, and I didn't know that it was such a big hit, especially when the Netflix series came out.
Hmm.
But the one that I played, the Castlevania, I think the only Castlevania game that I have finished was the one in on the DS, Dawn of Sorrow,
Yeah, Dawn of
which
Sorrow.
was which was actually looks like this game.
Hmm.
I think this game was the one that became popular, but I didn't know that there was a Sega Saturn version,
Hmm.
and I didn't even know that it was a definitive edition. I thought the one that came out in on the PS1 was the complete version.
Hmm.
So I might check this one out if I I don't know where I could play it because I don't have Sega Saturn,
Yeah.
and Sega Saturn is quite rare to find, especially here in the Philippines. So let's see if someone will try to.
How how is the Sega Saturn emulation these days?
It can be done.
Is
I
it better
mean,
or still eh?
look, it's not easy to do. You need to have a powerful computer to emulate this thing, to be honest. And
Yeah,
even with these Pi devices, handheld Pi device, I think there's this thing called an Ambonic Arc. That can run Saturn games, but in 2D. But even then, you're not going to get the full 60 frames per second. That's the thing. Really, if I'm being blunt with you, the easiest way to run a Saturn, like I've got a Saturn, and I've also got one which is modded, and it's basically the GPU is out. And I use the Terran hack. Basically, it's had work done on it, and you got a micro SD with the ROMs on it, and it plays via the Saturn, and that's the best way. Best way to play Saturn is on a Saturn, but just modding it because obviously the games, as we know, cost the king's ransom. This game in particular will cost you a little money as well. So it just makes sense just to hack it and just add the games in that way. And any ROMs that you have, just play it via an official Saturn. That's the best way I would say to play a Saturn. It's not to say that you can't emulate a Saturn. You just need to have the right sort of like PC and tools to do it. But
I
even
think Sir JDM's computer PC can run it.
yeah, so
Uh,
you go.
what's
Give
the
it a
best
go.
one that we have so far? Hayabusa. I think
is
that's
it?
the I think that's the name of the emulator for the Saturn.
Yeah.
Mm. With
So
the most compatibility anyway.
Face is another one. Give them a go and see if your PC will run it. It's just like on these little Pi devices, like you're gonna struggle with it. That's the thing. But yeah, Saturn emulation, it's still got a way to go, but it's not impossible. It's just let me just explain it in layman's terms with Sega Saturn hardware, and this also is the case with Nintendo 64 too. They both got the same issue, which is this is before the fifth generation is an interesting time when they use different microprocessors and components as well as a dedicated processor to get the games running. Okay, when we get to Dreamcast era, that thing had a dedicated GPU unit on it, and that was when because it had a dedicated GPU, all the sixth gen systems are much easier to emulate because you know what that GPU did, rather than all these the N64 and the Saturn having all these little various bits that all cogs that all work together. And the problem with that is that consistency of emulation because you don't know what clock speed that ran at, and it's a lot more to compute than the let's say a Dreamcast, for example. So that's why running a Saturn is harder than a Dreamcast, which is just simply because the native hardware was just overpowered for what it was. That's basically the short of it. If that makes sense, I don't know if I made sense with that one, but yeah,
Because the Saturn has a lot more
processors in there,
chips
a lot
and
more chips.
components running at the same time. Like unlike the Dreamcast, there's only one
Yeah,
who's running all
so
of the graphical
you got
capabilities of it. So yeah,
you got a 3D processor here, which is basic, and you got a much more advanced 3D processor here, but that 3D processor is better at running 2D games, so that will be better for it. But then when you try to emulate a set and you realize that this processor is also doing some work for that game too,
doing
and then
some work. This one's doing
getting
work. This one's doing work. This one is
yeah,
doing work.
and getting that to emulate and getting like, all the programs are going to get it's just not all going to always work together, and you're going to need the processing power of a computer to emulate properly, if that makes sense, or something powerful that will run it. And
How
it's
many was Saturn was using? Four.
Sorry.
How many chipsets was the Saturn using?
Well, it had a
Uh,
dedicated processor for sound. It had a dedicated processor for. It had two dedicated graphics
mm,
processors, two different processors for graphics. But it also had some other bits in there as well. But I
mm.
can't remember. I've lost count of it because it's just such a complicated piece of hardware. I remember
I
reading
think
about.
if memory serves me right, I think it's about 4 or 6, but I
Yeah,
don't know
it was a
about
silly
that.
number. It was over engineered, and there is yeah, yeah, it's just mad what happened with the Saturn. And I think we did an episode on the Saturn a while
Mm.
back where we covered it, where we explained in more detail as to why they went the way they did.
Watch
And
that episode, guys. It's our highest. It's our most downloaded episode, apparently.
that's it. Okay, fair
Oh
enough.
yeah, it's still our. For some reason, a lot.
You know, because of the Saturn. Yeah, because I
It's
think it's
our
such a
most
great
downloaded
thing that
show as
nobody
of
knows
yet.
about.
The Saturn
Nobody knows
episode. Yeah.
about it, and it's such a beautiful system as well. It's like it's like that kid at school nobody talked about, but then you realize like he was the king. It's one of those things. So give it a go. But yeah, that I think rounds up my little chat. Yeah, my little game. Those 5 games. Give them a go.
All right.
Give 'em a go.
Thank you for that, Sir Viraj. And that's the show, guys. And it's been 2 hours. And I think we cannot cover the entirety of the
Well,
exclusives for the PAL regions and the
that would be it
Japanese
for all year,
exclusives.
wouldn't we? Be all year. So yeah.
I'm not gonna be sharing mine because of time constraints now.
Okay.
But that's fine. We'll just do our shameless plugs. Sir
Yeah.
Joel had to run quite early because of some business, so we'll just do the shameless plugs now. We'll start with Sir JDM. Sir JDM, where can they find you?
Yes, you can catch me on 123 Go Retro on Twitch and also on YouTube, 123 Go Retro. And I don't usually stream regularly now, but I do post videos, my old videos, and maybe some old. I was planning to do some uh, hardware tech videos or content in the future. So please do check it out.
All right, thank you for that, Sir JDM, and of course, Sir Viraj of the Sega Mega Masters. Where can they find you?
You can find me in hell. No, you can find me you can find me
Yeah,
on
1, 2, 3, go retro.
you can find me on the Sega Mega Masters channel on YouTube.
No, you can find me.
So you can find you got that. Where else can you find me? Oh yeah, and you'll find me on the Sega Genesis group on Facebook, and obviously here as well. I know that we probably don't have any listeners in London or the UK listening. It's mostly obviously the Philippines and maybe America. But I'll be at the London Gaming Market on the 17th of March, where I buy and sell retro video games under the name of Bygone Games. So that's fun if you like handheld games. But yeah, that's me fundamentally. Back to you.
Right. Thank you for that, Sir Viraj. And we're just gonna, in speaking of shameless plugging, we'll just do a few in regarding to our partners here. So we got Shuffle Emporium will be hosting their PokeFest 2024 at the Green Hills Promenade, basement number 2, on February 24th and the 25th, 2024. And entrance is free. There will be conducting a Pokemon diorama contest, the Pokemon trading card game, and the video game competition as well. So for more details about the event, go to the Facebook page of Shuffle Emporium. Next up, we got Studio.ph. We'll be attending the Manila East City Collectors Convention at the Santa Lucia East Grand Mall on March 1st, March 2nd, 2024. Studio.ph will be hosting a high score tournament, the Famicom Classics Mappy on March 1st, and then Snow Brothers on March 2nd. Studio PH will also be hosting free plays of retro consoles and games, and also selling some gaming related merchandise. For more information, you can just check out the Facebook pages of Manila East CD Collectors and Studio.ph. And of course, our show So the Timeless Gamers show is apparently a affiliate now of the Bitmap Books. As you guys recall, we did an episode reviewing a few
Mm.
Bitmap books, and they were kind enough to give us a affiliate link. Um, and this will be with Bitmap Books, very outstanding publishing group here, selling top of the line quality hardbound picture books about video gaming history, compendiums that illustrates the history of games through genres, franchises, and consoles. As you can see in the picture there, NES, SNES, the Mega Drive, the PC Engine, JRPGs, beat 'em ups, computer RPGs, point and click. They even have a book dedicated to Metal Slug and the King of Fighters and a lot more. By using the link shown there, you will be helping out the Timeless Gamer Show for every book purchase that you make. That is bitmapbooks.co.uk question mark AFF equals 120. That is bitmapbooks.co.uk question mark AFF equals 120. And yeah, that's the show, guys. And on behalf of the Timeless Gamers crew, on behalf of Sir Ray, who made our thumbnails, Sir Joel, Sir Dan, who is still undergoing treatment as of the moment, and Miss I, who and she's still undergoing her review studies. Sir Viraj here and Sir JDM. Our games and our bodies may grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain. Hey,
Timeless.
bye bye, guys.
Bye bye.
See you next
And
time.
then, till next time. Till next time.
Ciao.